Okay, very good morning, everybody. This is the second day of our presentations. Yesterday we had lots of problem in internet, so we are not able to do the entire session live. But you all have done a very good recording of your presentations. And very quickly, all the presentations were uploaded also there. Let us have a look at this and let us also record it in this live stream. So for future reference, it can be useful to us. So we used a kind of a plan B to work on the things. All our presentations are archived on this website. 7 presenters were able to make their presentations, and then we had lots of problem with internet. So as a part of plan B, all the students were told to do the video shooting of their presentations, standing before the digital board, and a kind of a raw video on a first go, only without any editing. They have to prepare a short video, upload on their YouTube, and all those videos are archived also here. So we got a very good result. All of you were able to complete the work in due time and uploaded on your websites also. And we have archived all the presentations here. We hope today we will have a good internet connection, and so it won't be a problem to use our plan B or plan C today. Today the presentations are on contemporary English literature. In this paper, students study the literature published in 21st century. That is, in last 2 decades, the literature that is published that they study. Most of the texts are from India, one text from Britain. There are 4 novels that students study here, and they are going to make presentations on that. Today, we will have first presentation by Maya. We'll make it on interconnections of globalizations and environmental crisis in Gun Island, followed by Nanda's presentation on myth, motherhood, and the earth, ecofeminist perspective in Gun Island. Jayashree's will be on ghosts of the future, how climate change creates new mythologies in Gun Island. Gun Island is the title. So Jayashree, you have to write it in single inverted comma. This is the 4th time that we are doing the presentations, and the same instructions are given several times, and yet there will be 1 or 2 namunas always there to see that the same instructions are given. And we are just thinking about the title only, the title and the correction in that. Akshay's on etymological mystery in Gun Island. You also needs to see that Gun Island is a title, and it should be in single inverted comma. Dhatri's on blue humanities in Gun Island, a study of water, migration, and climate change. Yashraj on the past we choose, memory manipulation in the only story and Shutter Island. Bhumibaz on liar, liar, plot on fire, a study of unreliable narrators. It's quite poetic title you have given. Darshan on Susan MacLeod's journey, unraveling the depths of existential thought. Vishwas on Revolution 2020, education, corruption, and politics. Akash will make it on graveyard as a secular sanctuary in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Hardi on echoes of resistance, Revti's letter and the Maoist struggle in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Hiral will make it on voices from the margins, politics, identity, and resistance in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Kavitas will be on echoes of the unheard, marginalized communities in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. And the last one will be by Reshma, Dinanath Datta's journey, a contemporary quest. So we have 2 are still absent. Maya is there now. Hardi and Reshma, they have not even informed whether they will be late on. She has, but when? Right now? I have not received her message. Maya sent me in the morning that she might be late a little bit. 10:45 to 11, she told. It is already 11. Hardi's message is that and Reshma, no message. That's so when we have the exams, you have to see that this also is a part of university exams. And if you tell to university when the exam is scheduled that my bus will be late or we have this medical, then university will not allow you to enter the hall after 30 minutes, the rule. And there are thousands of students giving exams. You can't say that everybody will be okay on a particular day. Otherwise, you have to skip exam. You have to fail. You have to come next to give the exam. And because of this, that we fail to give priority to what is our work. That's why we can't give this. People say that students should be given on-demand exams, on-demand exam whenever they want to, but the students will not be accountable. When you give them a date, that this is the date, they will send a message that today I can't come, I will come tomorrow. This way it can be on demand. Because there are people who are there when the exams are scheduled. The other people also have spared their time for the exam. So when the exams are scheduled, the top priority should be given by all the students to that schedule. Otherwise, you have to skip that. You have to see that now I will come next semester. Next year I will come and appear. 1 year is fine for me. We have so many decades to live. In that 1 year is nothing there. So we can continue the study for 1-2 years more if you cannot spare a time or give a priority to the things also. Normally what happens is that when we have to give such instructions, for those students whom we want to give the instructions, they are absent. And those who are present, they have to listen every time. That those who are regular and present, they have to listen for those who remain absent. So we are live today. The recording is done. So I hope that Reshma and Hardi will watch this video. This is for them. It was for Maya also, but Maya has reached now. So they will watch the video and get a message that you have to give a top priority. Throughout the year, hardly there are 10-15 days of exams. At least those days, but during this, you have to be careful that we don't insist every day that you be on time. But at least in the exam, it is expected that you give respect to the timetable schedule of the exams also. Okay, so let us start with our presentation. Maya, you have to start with your things. Okay?
Personal information. Today's my presentation's hypothesis of the novel Gun Island by Amitav Ghosh, illustration that globalization intensifies environmental crisis by accelerating climate change, forces migration, and human displacement, demonstrating the interdependence between global socio-economic activities and environmental degradation. Research question: how does Gun Island reflect the impact of globalization on environmental crisis? 56. He is an Indian-born writer whose ambitions novels use complex narrative strategies to probe the nature of national and personal identity, particularly of the people of Indian and Southeast Asia. He was reward received in 2018 Jananpith Award. He received a BA in 1976 and an MA in 1978 from the University of Delhi. He, he subsequently attended the University of Oxford, where in 1982 he received a PhD in socioanthropology. The globalization of environmental crisis. Global interdependence, environmental issues like climate change, deforestation, and pollution have become global problems due to interconnected economics. Industrialization impact. Rapid industrial growth has contributed to environmental degradation and resource exploitation. Policy and cooperation. Internal cooperation and policy reforms are crucial to mitigate environmental challenges. Sustainability. Promotions sustainable development is essential to address the crisis effectively. Gun Island as a climate fiction. Climate fiction. The novel addresses climate change through depiction of extreme weather events, forced migration, and ecological imbalance. Hosh portrays how natural calamities impact human lives, forcing communities to relocate and struggle for survival. Myth and reality. Hosh interviews contemporary issues like climate change and migration. This highlights how historical displacement due to environmental crisis still resonate today. Border transgression. The novel's blurs boundaries between human and non-human lives, emphasizes how environmental disasters affect all lives being to reconsider their relationship with nature. Capitalism's impact. The article critique how capitalist greed and industrial exploitation contribute to environmental degradation, leading in increased displacement and suffering. Climate change and forced migration. Climate induced migration. The article explores how climate change, such as rising sea levels and natural disaster, forces people to migration. Legal protection gaps. It highlights the lack of internal legal frameworks to protect climate refugees. State responsibility. The study emphasizes that nation state must take responsibility for safeguarding human rights and providing protection. Human rights perspective. Ensuring the rights and dignity of climate displaced persons is a major challenge. The role of myth and history. Interconnection of myth and reality. The novel blends the myth of Mansa Devi and Chandasagar with a real world issue like climate change and migration, showing how ancient stories still resonate today. Migration and environmental crisis. Hosh use historical migration patterns and environmental challenges to reflect on contemporary global displacement. Cultural reflection. The story highlights the persistence of cultural beliefs and their influence on human behavior in the face of global crisis. Amitav Ghosh's message in Island is Ghana Island. Amitav Ghosh critiques modern development models that neglect environmental consequences, highlighting their role in climate change and displacement. He emphasizes the need for sustainable practices and global cooperation to combat environmental crises. Through the novel, Ghosh uses literature as a tool for climate consciousness, showing how stories and myths can inspire an awareness the environment. Conclusion. In Gun Island, Amitav Ghosh explores the link between globalization and climate change, showing how environmental crises lead to forced migration and human suffering. The novel highlights the role of capitalism in an environmental regression and uses myth to reflect re- recurring ecological challenges. Ultimately, Ghosh argue readers to promote sustainability and a global cooperation to combat the climate crisis. This is my references. Thank you. Now, if any question, for ask me.
There also you have to connect in that.
Maya, my question is, how does the Gun Island portray the relationship between environment crisis and the historical narratives?
Gun Island portrayed the relationship between environmental crisis and historical narratives. Significant influences of natural disaster, rising sea levels, and forced migration. It highlights how global environmental challenges impact human life.
Can I start? Hello everyone, I Nanda Chavda and today's my topic name is Myth, Motherhood and Earth, Eco-Feminist Perspectives in Gun Island. This is the table of content. And start with the first introductions. Here explores the eco-feminist perspective in Amitabh combines mythological migration and climate change through legend of Mansa Devi, the snake goddess. By analyzing the ecological and feminist dimensions of the myth, we examine how Ghosh critique the corporate patriarchal exploration of nature and woman, positioning the goddess as the both protector and avenger of environmental destruction. This is my research question. First, how does Gun Island re-image the myth of Mansa Devi through an eco-feminist lens to critique environmental destruction and patriarchal structures? Hypothesis in Amitav Ghosh, Girl Island employs the myth of Mansa Devi as an eco-feminist allegory to illustrate the inseparable relationship between nature and woman, arguing that the degradation of one leads to the operation of other. The novel suggests that mythological and ecological crises are interconnected, revealing the urgency of addressing climate change through cultural narratives. Now start with the about the Amitav Ghosh. Amitav Ghosh is a renowned Indian writer known for his explorations of national and personal identity, particularly in India and Southeast Asia. He works blend historical narrative with complex storytelling, addressing themes such as colonialism, migration, and climate change. Amitav Ghosh fictions include The Circle of Reasons, The Shadow Lines, The Glass Palace, Ibis Trilogy, Sea of Poppies, and River of Smoke and The Flood of Fire. He was the first English language writer to receive the Jenafit Award in the 2018. In 2024, he was honored with the into over 30 languages, earning him international recognition. Now, let us see about the novel. Amitav Ghosh, Gun Island novel is around 2019, is inspired by the myth of a snake goddess Mansa Devi. It follows a rare book dealer on a journey where he confronts his past and realities of climate change. A Brooklyn-based rare book dealer visits his birthplace in Kolkata, and he becomes entangled with the legend of Mansa Devi. In the Bengal mangroves, he encounters king cobra, leading to uncanny events that blur line between human and non-human. People with a diverse cast of characters and set in places that range of the Sundarbans to Los Angeles and Venice. This is the story about a world in which creatures and beings of every kind of have a torn loose from their accustomed homes by the catastrophic process of displacement that are now unfolding across the earth. At the end, ever increasing pace, it is a story about a man whose faith in the world and is restored by two remarkable women. What is the ecofeminism? Ecofeminism is emerged as a literary movement during the early 17th century. Ecofeminism refers to feminist theory and activism informed by ecology. Ecofeminism is concerned with connection between domination of a woman and the domination of nature. Here, Rosemary Radford Ruther, an ecofeminist theologian, features the interplay of nature and human beings in her definition of ecofeminism. Ecofeminism brings together these two explorations of ecology and feminism in their full or deep forms and explore how male dominations of women and domination of nature are interconnected with both in cultural ideology and in social structures. In Janice Birkeland, an ecofeminist environmental planner, sees ecofeminism as a logical conclusion of feminism that theories the interrelations among self, societies, and nature. Now, ecofeminism in the myth of Mansa Devi in Gun Island. Amitav Ghosh's last novel, Gun Island, is a modern parable woven around the legend of snake goddess Mansa Devi. It is a story of travel and migration, lays with myth and folktales, and depicts the crisis of climate change. In the legend, Mansa Devi represents the natural world or ecological concern. Being a goddess, she is also a embodiment of Mother Nature. So the deconstructions of natural resources by human beings with profit-making motives are against the interest of a goddess. Like original myth of Chand Sagar, the gun merchant through himself rich and clever enough not to defer to goddess of snakes. To establish her rule, Mansa Devi needed a homage of both humans and animals. She had to plead cajole and persuade him to let him do her bidding in order to run away from persecution of goddess Mansa Devi, patron of snakes and all venomous creatures. He had traveled across the lands and ocean and encountered endless trouble. Amitav Ghosh reinforced the myth of Mansa Devi through the Shrine architecture built in 17th century around the same period as the Little Ice Age, traces the path of merchant in hot pursuit through its symbols, phrase and panel, the physical appearance of the king. Cobra establishes the connection between myth and belief system. The king cobra follows the din but does not attack him as if in acknowledgement of his threatening intervention into its domain, but it attacks Tipu as it feels threatened. Tipu pays a price for his pride and insensitivity. Rafi grandfather's notes in the gun island. If Cobra puts something in you, you can never be rid of it. In the other words, once nature is harmed, there is no reversing it. Her blinding presence will forever haunt. And Tipu's got a medium where she can make her presence felt, reminding men of folly of his actions and their irreversible consequences. The role of Mansa Devi as the eco-femini protector and avenger gets emphasized. The myth of Mansa Devi is an eco-feminist challenges against corporate patriarchal system. Then he realizes the tender nature of pursuit when he sees it from perspective of goddess herself, and then the pursuit no longer seemed to be story and almost incomprehensible vindictiveness, but something more broad and even tender, a search driven by fear and desperation. The power of myth is doubly confirmed when Tipu tips Pia from the impending beaching of dolphins and in the Sundarbans, bringing the species to near extinction. All these all this is mysteries connected with movement of gun merchant. The catastrophe which ensues, Sinta argues, has rational explanations in the global warming, changing habits, increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and the other greenhouse gases too. Here I comparison of Mansa Devi and the Ganga River. Mansa Devi and Ganga River hold a deep religious significance in the Hinduism, symbolizing purification, protect, and divine meditations. Mansa Devi, the serpent goddess, is a worship preliminary for protection from snake bites, fertile and well-being. She is considered both benevolent and breathful, depending on the devotion of her followers. Similarly, the Ganga River is seen as a purification and Mahakumbh Mela held every 12 years at the Triveni Sangam in Prayagraj attracts the millions of devotees who takes a ritualistic dip in the river, believing it washes away their sins and leads to spiritual enlightenment, unwavering faith in the Ganga's divine powers closely parallels the devotion to Mansa Devi as both believed to meditate between the moral and the divine realms. Moreover, both Mansa Devi and Ganga River play crucial roles, religions, traditions, and community ritual, reinforcing collective belief and the spiritual unity. Just as Mansa Devi is invoked to prevent calamities and ensure prosperity, the Ganga is revered as a life-living force that sustains civilizations and nourishes millions. Festival dedicates Mansa Devi, much like the Mahakumbh Mela, emphasize faith purification and spiritual renewal. Whether through the offering Mansa Devi or ceremonial baths in Ganga, these traditions highlight the enduring nature of religion. In a deconstructed myth of Mansa Devi, the myth that steers the narrative of Gun Island is based a popular folk legend pertains to the war of Mansa Devi. Ghosh uses history as a way to develop mythical narrative and exploratory journey of protagonist. Then there are two important components: natural force, wind, and the most powerful dangerous species, snake. Dean states that I learned that massive wildfire had been raging around Los Angeles for several days, thousands of acres of land, and had been incinerated, and tens of thousands of people had been moved to safety. There is a myth that Mansa Devi sends scorching winds for gun merchant and captain and the dry wine birds their houses. There is another deconstruction mythical development. Devi burns their houses, which is a very fantastical and fictional aspect. Actually, climate change is responsible for dryness and messy fire. This dried season increased moisture and strain vegetation and therefore have caused for its more sustainable several fires. The myth blames that unfortunate traveler is the cause of the fire. Deconstruct here that not Mansa Devi but climate change is the main reason for deconstruction. The conclusion, the novel Gun Island deconstruct the myth of Mansa Devi, highlight the intersection between mythology, feminism, environment concern by portraying the goddess as a force resisting ecology deconstruction. Destruction goes critic human exploitations of nature and human under the capitalist and the patriarchal system. The novel ultimately underscored the need for ecological consciousness and sustainable coexistence, making mythology a tool for environmental activism. This is my work cited. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, ask me.
Nanda, my question is, the novel presents Mansa Devi as both a protector and an avenger of nature. Does this portrayal reform traditional gender roles, or does it challenge them through an ecofeminist lens?
Yes, it is challenge to challenges traditional gender roles, and here portrayal the Mansa Devi's character is a female figure, but it is not passive character, and she protect the nature and punishes those who harm it. This shows the power of both woman and environment.
Nanda, my question is in the novel Gun Island, Amita Ghosh blend the myth with a real world ecological crisis. Do you think incorporating myth weakness the scientific argument for climate change, or does it make issue more impactful?
Myth does not weaken the argument. It makes it more relatable. Stories and traditionals help people understand complex issue. Goes here uses a myth blends the past belief with modern environment concern. The novel highlights real climate danger through the myth. Thank you.
Directly from the presentation. So when you take things, you have to cite also. That is what is known as academic integrity. In dissertation writing, what you learn is this, that when you use any resources, for example, this was our one previous student's presentation, Hina Parmar, Ecofeminism in the Myth of Mansa Devi. And many of the slides you have taken directly from this. For example, this deconstructed myth of Mansa Devi, this entire slide you have used in your presentation. So what we learned in dissertation writing is academic integrity, or in research methodology. Tomorrow we will have presentations and we will talk very good things about what is ethics, what is plagiarism, and everything. And in practice, we fail to do that. So if you take things from anybody, you have to cite this presentation. That if it helped you in giving ideas, why do you hide that? That is what we have to learn in dissertation writing or research methodology, academic integrity. Wherever I take ideas from, I have to tell that this is where I have taken. And here, this presentation cited Syed's article, which also you have taken in text, but at the end of the text, you have not given that. So copy also is not proper. So you have to see that in text too. That also is a part of our dissertation things also. So these are very basics, and such mistakes, if you commit, then people will say that you are not taught anything about what is research writing, what is research methodology. You have done masters, you have written dissertation, and yet the fundamentals of research you are not aware about. And then people will question us that we have not taught anything to you, that we have done dissertation, but we have not taught. We now are telling to the PG centers where there are no research supervisors, like those teachers who are not PhD, then they should not allow students to do dissertation writing, because if the teachers are not PhD, they will not be able to guide in a proper manner. But they will say that, see, your students are also doing the same thing. Then what is the difference between the teachers who are not PhD and who are PhD? So when we learn a paper on research methodology, we have to put into. And now you have passed GSET. No? So now there's more burden on that. When we have some upadhi, it becomes upadhi. એ મોટી ઉપાધિ બની જાય કે હવે આ ઉપાધિને સાચવવી કેમ, મોટા બર્ડન માથા ઉપર બને. આપણો પરફોર્મન્સ એ પ્રમાણે હવે ક્વોલિટેટિવ થવું જોઈએ. કોઈ ઉપાધિ લઈએ ત્યારે, એટલે ઉપાધિ જે ડિગ્રીને કહેવામાં આવે, ઉપાધિ એ ઉપાધિ છે ખરેખર. કે હવે પરફોર્મન્સ આપણે ઇમ્પ્રુવ કરવું જ પડશે. Yes, you can start.
Hello everyone, myself Jayashree Khacher. Today I am going to give my presentation on Ghost of the Future, how climate change creates new mythologies in Gun Island. This is my academic information. This is the table of content. My research question for this presentation is, how does Gun Island by Amitav Ghosh utilize mythological structure to narrate climate change and migration as a contemporary crisis? My hypothesis is Amitav Ghosh's Gun Island reconfigures traditional mythological motifs and to articulate contemporary anxieties surrounding climate change and forced migration, suggesting that emerging ecological crises are generating new mythic structures that shape cultural consciousness and public perception. Before that, brief overview of Gun Island. The novel is written by Amitav Ghosh, blending mythology, migration, and climate change. It follows the story of Dinanath Datta, who is also called as a Din, as he uncovers the legend of the gun merchant in a changing world. Mythology and unknown myths help societies to explain the inexplicable natural disasters, plagues, and now climate change. The novel reimagines ancient myths to reflect modern ecological crises. Mythology as a response to environmental crisis. Myths born from a natural disaster. There are many myths we can find in many mythologies which has natural disasters, like the Great Flood, myths of Noah's Ark, which is from Bible. Then there is a Mesopotamian epic name of which is Epic of Gilgamesh. And then in India we have a myth of Manu, who was also warned by Vishnu. Volcanoes, droughts, and plagues, often linked to divine punishment in ancient cultures, explain the unexplained. Why myths are used? Myths are used because the disaster, the natural chaos which is getting created, to explain that you have the god is punishing you because you have done something wrong. Today, climate change is the new apocalypse, inspiring myths and of catastrophe and survival. Stories of vanishing lands, climate refugees, and a haunted planet emerge in modern narrative. The rebirth of the Banduki Sadagar gun merchant. The legend and the curse. Banduki Saudagar means gun merchant, is a mythical trader cursed by Mansa Devi, who is from Bengal. Mansa Devi in Indian mythology known as a goddess of serpent. It also represents the human defiance against natural force. Myth in Gun Island. The legend resurfaces in a world facing rising sea levels and mass migration. The curse now reflects climate disaster rather than divine threat. The merchant as a symbol. Uh, from wandering trader to a climate refugee, the gun merchant represents forced displacement. That how he had to move due to curse. Ghost of the Anthropocene, spirits of a dying world. Climate change versus haunting. Anthropocene is the time of contemporary time. That as we know that that whatever human are doing, there is creating uh, uh, what I can say is there are vanishing places due to the climate change. There are sinking islands, disappearing first due to forest fires, then extinct are lost due to the climate changes. As we know, in like city there are so many types of birds we can't see, which we used to see like in a daily basis. Then altered landscapes, ghost towns, dead rivers, and collapsing ecosystems. Like even whenever if there is a flood, and after that village is instinct, then it will be known as a ghost town. For example, there is a place in Rajasthan which name is Kuldara. As we know that Rajasthan has this problem of uh, less rain. So there is a myth that the 1500 people from that village in one night vanished, and now that place is considered as a ghosted place. Ghostly presence in Gun Island. As we know that in the novel we can find say snakes and supernatural omens as a nature's warning sign. As we know that the animals are always been considered as omens. Like for example, in Norse mythology, Raven is considered as a messenger of Odin. Odin and past lingers, shaping new fears and myths in an unstable world. Psycholo- and evolving folklore. New Age ghost stories reflect ecological grief and human displacement. The role of non-human agents in myth making. Animals as a messenger. As I said, that animals has been always been a messenger in many mythology. In our Indian mythology, we have seen that there are animals and birds are considered as a messenger of God. Animals as omens, protectors, and divine messenger. As I said, the ravens and serpents in the Hindu mythology, as we know, Vasuki. We call the snake Vasuki. In today, animals act as a ecological warnings in a scientific way. If there is a big migration of any animal or any birds in a big way, then mass die of that. We have seen in many news that so many birds are dying, or the ocean creatures are dying. Then habitat changes signal environmental distress. Key key animals in Gun Island, as we know that snakes, which symbols of danger, ancient curses, and rising climate threats. Dolphins, which are once seen as mystical beings, now struggling due to ocean pollution and warming. Spiders' webs as a metaphor of interconnectedness and fragility in nature. As we know that spiders' webs are fragile, but still it's interconnected. Then breaking the so many um, unusual human-animal interaction signal a world out of a balance. Encounters with a lost, displaced, or aggressive animals hint at climate change-driven disruption. As we know that we have seen in the news that the lions or leopards are coming in this area, or which are usually in our Gujarat. We have seen that the lions and leopards are found in a area of Saurashtra, like Junagadh and all. But sometimes we can find that they are also coming in this area. The mythological blurring of boundaries between nature and humans reflects real-world ecological crisis. Digital myths and climate panic. The internet as a breeding ground for a new myths. As we all know about it, that internet has so many myths going on. That there are so many conspiracies which are no. Uh, authenticness that even it's real or not. The one is climate conspiracy theories of government controlled weather, like climate hoaxes that everyone believes that there is no climate problems there, but it's everything is governed by it, everything is controlled by government. Then AI generated folklore, deep fake disaster, fake environmental prophecies. As we have seen so many videos of like fake disaster happening. Then echo chambers. Echo chambers means that social media will show you whatever you want to show. See, like if you are believing in this myth, then they will show the videos of only that myths. They won't show you that it's wrong. Viral climate stories and public perception, apocalyptic narratives. For example, the world will end in 2030. Instagram, we have this reel going on that in a few days the uh, world will end due to many. And then there is a fake solution. Well, they uh, they create conspiracies, they create problems, and they also give the fake solutions, misleading claims about technology reversing climate changes, digital doomsday cults, online communities obsessed with environmental collapse, digital myths versus ancient oral myths. Just like ancient myths shaped by fear of nature, digital myths now shape climate panic. In past, oral traditions warned of floods, plague, and divine breath, and now memes, tweets, and viral videos spread modern fears of ecological collapses. Climate change and the myth of eternal progress. The Anthropocene challenges the enlightenment ideal that human progress is boundless and invisible. The belief in rationality, scientific advancement, and human mastery over nature is now being confronted by the reality of ecological destruction. Industrialization, capitalism, and technology, once seen as the driving forces of civilization, are now failing to protect us from the consequences they helped to create, like they help to create us the rising sea levels, extreme weather, and a biodiversity loss. These forces, once treated as a modern gods, are proving vulnerable. Gun Island questions whether our faith in human supremacy over nature is itself a myth. The novel suggests that nature is not something human can conquer, but something we remain deeply entangled with. And climate change is a consequence of ignoring this fundamental truth. The idea of limitless growth is unsustainable, and the novel urges us to rethink our relationship with the planet before the myth of progress collapses in time. The mythic structure of climate narratives, that how this has been created. Climate change follows a classical mythic arc. First is prophecy, then catastrophe and redemption. Prophecy. Scientists like ancient oracles warn of impending doom, but their message are often ignored. As we know that there are so many prophecies, and if in now I say contemporary time, we all have the prophecy given Ambalal Bhai Patel, who always gives prophecy about climate, then catastrophe. After that, the natural disaster natural disasters come, rising sea levels and mass extinction serves as the punishment of humanity's hubris. Means you didn't follow the prophecy, you didn't believe in it. There, because of that, the catastrophe happened, and at the end comes redemption. Activists, survivors, and communities fight. So here are four examples which I have found which are connecting to Gun Island. The first is Goddess Khodiar. So there is a village which is nearby my village is like 10 kilometers, and I have lived in that village for 15 years. The name of the village is Roishala, which is known as the birthplace of Goddess Khodiar and Awad. So there is a myth that back in the day there was a buffalo was killed by uh, special caste people with a, I would not to casteism, but they are called as a Chualia Koli or a Thakur Koli, which so they had killed, and then the goddess had cursed them that they will never live in this village. And I have seen that in that village you will never found the people from that caste that they are living. So this shows the migration that they had, even if they lived there, they had to live. Then there is a myth of Ebalwala, who is from a Talaja. There is that black deer or something, that there is a myth that the rain was Jain man had a rain on the antler of that deer, and Ebalwala had to catch that deer, and the thread which was there entangled, he had to remove it, because if that thread is removed, then the rain will come, and if not, then rain will not come. As we That was the myth in that. As you know, then we have all know about this titodi, which is in English called as a red-wattled lapwing. That myth is that if I say in Gujarati કે જ્યાં ટીટોડી ઈંડા મૂકે, જો ઊંચા મૂકે ને તો એટલો વરસાદ આવશે. As we know that it can connect it, that how it about climate, that rain will come. Then the last is the lost city of Dwarka. As we all know that there is a everyone saying that the city of gold is now in the sea. So that also can be a migration, as we see in the Gun Island novel, The Venice, which is due to rising level of sea has vanishing, and in the same way the Dwarka has also vanished due to rising sea levels. In conclusion, climate change is more than just a scientific reality. It represents a fundamental shift in culture and mythology. Like past civilization that wove myths around natural disasters, we are now creating new narratives that reflect our anxieties about environmental collapse. Amitav Ghosh's Gun Island serves as a lens to understand how ancient myths adapt to modern crises. The Banduki Saudagar's journey, supernatural omens, and mysterious animal behaviors illustrate how old stories take on new meanings in an age of displacement and ecological turmoil. The novel's message is clear. We are not just witnessing climate change, we are narrating and mythologizing it. The stories we tell today will shape how future generations understand and respond to the crisis. As myths of the Anthropocene from in real time, they become a reflection of humanity's fears, hopes, and uncertain future. These are my references. Now, if anyone have any question, you can ask.
Jayashree, my question is, can you think of any contemporary myth or stories influenced by climate change?
So Maya, yes, there are many contemporary myths and stories we can find. The movie by Christopher Nolan, Interstellar, which is also one assist that how we should take care of nature, and what if we didn't take care of it, what will happen. Then there are so many stories we can see, like the fires in LA, and tornadoes and all. So many things are there are stories. Anyone else?
Jayashree, how do you think mythology help us understand modern environmental crisis?
So mythology helps is like really in a good way, as I said, that it makes explainable. For It's not the things that are happening like earthquakes and all, which are unexplainable. If they easily explain to anyone, like God is punishing you for this sin you did. Like for example, the we all know about this. If Krishna's story, that they were worshipping the Govardhan Parvat and not the Indradev, and and as a punishment, that day it's rained too much and all. As we know that it they use the myth of Krishna and Govardhan Parvat and Indradev to for the heavy rain. So there are in that way, mythology helps us to understand modern environmental crisis, even in the Gun Island, as we know, as we seen that the snake, the myth of Mansa Devi and the city of Venice. And all. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself Akshay Nimbark, and today I'll presenting on the etymological mystery in Gun Island. So in this presentation, I'll try to explore that how Amitav Ghosh uses etymology in this novel Gun Island. Uh, Here is my personal information. Introduction. So Amitav Ghosh, Gun Island explores the power and etymology in uncovering hidden histories and migration patterns. The mystery of Banduki Sodagar, the gun merchant, leads protagonist Deen Datta on a journey where words evolves across culture and century. So the novel Gun Island, as we know, opens with the our protagonist Deen Datta and how he reached to the story of the gun merchant. Ghosh highlights how colonial and cross-cultural influences shape language, much like human displacement. The novel shows how myth, history, and migration are interconnected through linguistic transformation. By decoding etymology, Gun Island reveals the deep ties between language, folklore, and contemporary global crisis. So my research question for today's presentation is, how does Amitav Ghosh use etymology in Gun Island to challenge conventional historical narratives and highlights the fluidity of cultural identity? And the central argument of this presentation is, in Gun Island, Amitav Ghosh employs etymology as a narrative device to reveal hidden historical and reframe dominant historical discourses, illustrating how language evolves alongside human migration and cultural exchanges. So, many previous presenters talk much about Amitav Ghosh and the novel Gun Island, so we're not going deep into that. Let's see what is etymology. So, in basic terms, etymology is a study of words' origin. That how the words changes its meaning in different culture. So according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the history of linguistic form, such as a word, shown by tracing its development since its earliest recorded occurrences, and in the language where it is found by tracing its transmission from one language to another by analyzing it into a component's parts. by identifying its cognates and other languages by tracing it and its cognates to a common ancestral from in an ancestral language. So, in basic term, the study of words origin is shown as etymology. So according to Oxford Dictionary, the branches of linguistics which deals with determining the origins of word and the historical development of their form and meaning, it known as the etymology. So etymological novel Gun Island. In the Gun Island, Amitav Ghosh uses the etymology. So, in this quote, which is Bhattacharya highlights in his article, in the fourth line, we see Ghosh write that like sailor, words too a traveler and tracing their journey is like describing voyages of adventure. So Ghosh highlights uh, words as a traveler. He said that word is also like person who is migrate from one culture to another culture and how the words changes its meaning by culture wise. So etymology, the study of word origin, plays a central role in Gun Island, shaping the novel themes and revealing hidden layers of meaning within language. Ghosh states how words evolve over time, acquiring different connotations across culture and historical periods. This focus on linguistic history allows the novel to explore deeper philosophical and cultural connections. So here are some words, etymological words, which is used in the novel Gun Island by Amitav Ghosh. Let's see one by one them. The first one is the Gun Island. The title itself suggests that uh, Amitav Ghosh uses etymology in the novel. The title Gun Island, if we read, then we must think about that novel is particularly based on guns or the place where guns are we may buy, but there is no direct connection to the guns. The novel open with the word bandhu, which means gun in many languages. But we may find after reading the novel that there is no direct reference to gun. There is another reference to island within island. There is one foundry where ornaments, including bullets, were cast. So then the reference of word ghetto comes, and this word ghetto derives from the connected words with Jews. That means foundry, where the gun and the other ornaments were made. Uh, then an Arabic word Benedict comes, which is comes from the word Benedict from German language, and in the Arabic Benedict becomes al bandukia. So this means not a gun, but this al bandukia means the place Venice. So for this Venice, this al bandukia word is referred. So the ultimate meaning of the title is merchant who visited Venice, who found Ghetto Foundry. The another word is the land of palm sugar candy. So and the this another word which is comes in the novel. The Bengali word for land palm sugar candy is tal mishri desh. So tal is used for a kind of palm tree which is produced a sugar syrup. Desh means country, and misri is uses for sugar candy. So in the novel, a character Chinta said that Arabic word misra means Egyptian. Perhaps crystallized sugar is known as a misri because the process had come to Bengal by way of Egypt. So there is a process of sugar making in Egypt. We may find that comes by the trade in Bengal, the particular place like Sundarban. So this trade becomes the significant role in this land of palm sugar candy. This phrase likely refers to Bengal, especially region like Sundarbans, which have historical been involved in the trade of palm and sugar. The reference might highlight Bengal's economic past, especially its role in trade and agricultural exports. So, this world is particularly suggests the two places, Egypt and Bengal. Uh, by the trade, this process of sugar making is comes from Egypt to Bengal. Then the land of change. This word comes. The change means in the Bengali language. It means Shikol Dweep. The merchant was captured by pirates and taken to Egypt, and all are meeting at Sicily. So land of change is used in the novel for this place Sicily. This is reference to Sicilia and it is now Sicily. The island of Chain is used for Sicily. This term could represent slavery, forced labor, or indentured servitude during colonial times. So this Sicily place is historical place for slavery, and that is historical forced migration done here in the 19th and 20th century. Many Bengal laborers were forcibly taken or lured into a contrast and sent to places like Mauritius and Caribbean and Southeast Asia. So for that, this land of chain word uses in the novel, and it is chain is a metaphor. This might symbolize the social economic constraints placed on marginalized community in history, prevailing mobility and freedom. And it is if we see connection to the Gun Island, then the novel often explores migration, displacement, and this term could reflect historical bondage and economical entrapment. Then the word bhuta comes. This word bhut has many meanings in different language. In Sanskrit, the word bhut means spirits or ghosts. In Bengali folklore, this means bhutas are restless spirits that haunt specific places, often those linked to tragic death or unnatural ending. So, in this context, if we see, then the word bhut means a ghost or spirit. But in the novel, it is not so. In the novel, this word bhuta used for the historical memory. Its meaning spirits and supernatural natural beings or past existence. In South Asian tradition, bhutas are believed to be spirits that can haunt and possess places. So this novel And then the land of Karchi. Then the land of Karchi's word comes. In the novel, there is a character Chinta asks for a Bengali translation of the word, and our protagonist Dean told her it was called Rumali Desh. So, in the Bengali language, the Rumal means a handkerchief, but in the novel that land of Karchi word is not used for a rumal or handkerchief. It is used for a locate the place of Turkey. Rumeli comes from Rome, which is how Constantinople, the Byzantine Rome was known in Arabic and Persian. It means gun merchant, and Captain Ilyas would have gone from Egypt to Turkey. Now let's see the importance of etymology in the novel Gun Island. So Gun Island is bridging past and present through this etymology, and this helps the revealing the hiding meanings of the words. And etymology is tool that tradition and societal beliefs. It helps to understand the belief system, and it awaken through words. Uh, it shows the different meaning of different words in different cultures. And if we see it as a modern communication and etymology, the online discussion about the world booth symbolize how digital communication fosters linguistic exploration, reinforces the idea that language is dynamic and constantly evolving. Then the conclusion, the etymology of mystery in Gun Island serves as a powerful lens through which Amitav Ghosh explores the interconnectedness of language, history, and migration. By tracing the evolution of world and their meaning across different culture and time period, the novel highlights the fluidity of identity and the impact of colonial and cross-cultural cultural exchanges. Etymology as a presented in the novel, it is not merely an academic pursuit but means of uncovering hidden narratives and challenges established historical perspective. In doing so, Gun Island bridges the past and the present, demonstrating how language carries the imprints of migration, displacement, and global crisis. My personal learning outcome. This presentation is help to understanding the role of etymology in shaping language, displacement in Gun Island, and it recognizes how words evolve across cultural and historical periods, influencing meaning. It explores Amitav Ghosh use of myth and folklore to uncover hidden histories, and it also examines the novel's themes of globalization, colonial impact, and environmental crisis. It develops critical thinking skill in interpreting linguistic transformation in literature, and it appreciate how literature can bridge past and present through language and storytelling. So here are some references, and for this idea of this presentation I also referred a previous student, Lata Baria's presentation on contemporary literature. And thank you now for your questions.
So, Akshay, as you talk about etymology in Gun Island, can you tell me that how does Gun Island offer a new perspective on history?
Yes, Gun Island challenges the idea that history is unchanging. The Gun Island shows us that history is ever-changing process. History by the tracing the world's origin, Ghosh encourage the readers that to show history as a fluid and ever-changing process.
Akshay, my question is what role does etymology play in Gun Island and how does exploring word origins contribute to the novel's themes?
Yes, so in the novel Gun Island, Amitav Ghosh uses language to reveal hidden meanings of the world, and if we uh, 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 if we exploring world's origin, then it helps to understand us that the world is also like a person. Ghosh suggests that world is also like a person who migrates from one culture to another culture, and how it changed the meaning. So that is the major purpose of Ghosh to contribute the novel theme.
So good that you orally mentioned that you have taken from the previous students' presentation, but you have to cite also. In the citation that you have given, you have to mention that also. In arts, normally people are very poor in lectures are not so high, because normally it should be like that arts humanities people should be more ethical, but there is a different thing. Science people seems to be more ethical in research writing, and in arts people try to hide from where they have taken. So they don't acknowledge the people rightfully, that if I got some ideas from somebody, then we try to hide that and try to say these are my ideas, which is unethical practice so far as academic things are concerned. And overall it's throughout world, if we see arts people's citations always are very low because of this also. Whereas in science there is a normal practice. Even if you've taken an idea from somebody in oral conversation, then also you use write the name of the person as a contributor. Whereas here that doesn't happen. So that practice we need to develop. We talk a lot about ethics and morality, but we talk only. Even in our practice of research writing, that is not found.
Shall I start? Hello everyone. Today's my topic of presentation is Blue Humanities in Gun Island, a study of water, migration and climate change. These are my personal details. And let us start by having an introduction to what is Blue Humanities. Basically, Blue Humanities is a field of one of the field of eco-criticism. And this shift focused from the land-based arguments to the oceanic arguments. Nowadays, as Earth is covered 90% of the water, and we have a lots of climate change issue regarding the global warming, and that affected the sea area, and at the end, the human at the end. So this is how the emergence of Blue Humanities happened. And due to lots of oceanic crisis, this field has been developed, and literature, philosophy, and history started writing works based upon the Blue Humanities to talk about how the climate change is affecting all the more Earth. Talking about Amitav Ghosh, then he exemplifies the Blue Humanities framework with his work Gun Island. And here in the work, water is an active force, not in passive, who is shaping the narrative. And this study will examine how Gun Island will critique anthropocentrism and emphasizing the key scholars in Blue Humanities are first and foremost Steve Mans, and he examined the chaotic and unpredictable nature of water in his pioneer work Shipwrecked Modernity. And this is the work who pioneered the term Blue Humanities as well. So from this, the talk based on Blue Humanities started. Then comes the Stacy Alamio, and she introduced the transcorporality, where she talked about how there is an corresponding connection between human and non-human living. So basically, three of them are activists and talking about nature. Third is Estrida Nieminis, and she developed the idea of hydrofeminism. So this term is basically connected with how human bodies and water is connected. She gave the idea that human body has the water, 90% of the water, and that water connects the outer water of the earth to the humans. And that's how in her pioneer work, Bodies of Water, she developed the idea of a hydrofeminism. So my research question and hypothesis for this is, how does Gun Island engage with Blue Humanities framework to critique climate change, migration, and human water interconnectedness? And the hypothesis is, Blue Humanities challenge the anthropocentric narratives and portrays water as an active agent. And this novel is linking that very idea of that. This is the literature review in tabular format in order to prepare this topic. And these are the sources which I have referred to prepare this presentation in tabular format. So let us start by understanding how the water is an active agent in this work. As we have seen that Gun Island is portraying the ongoing issue of climate change, of raising sea level, storms, floods, and cyclones. And that's what is making this book all the more connected with the Blue Humanities. As in his work, Amitav Ghosh, Great Derangement, talked about how literature can help to talk about climate change. And this work is something that is exemplifying that idea. So Cyclone Elia in the novel is devastated the Sundarban. And here we can connect the idea of Rob Nixon's slow violence. In this idea, Nixon talked about how these slowly and steadily climate is affecting the coastal area of the earth, and how the water and all the more climate changes is affecting the earth. So this low violence is nowadays we can find out in the contemporary time as well, that we have now all the more cyclones around us. And Cyclone Elia, particularly narrated by Nilima Bose in the narrative, is talking about the same issue. The line from the novel, I quote, "The storm has erased the boundary between land and water," unquote. So this is capturing the essence of how the Blue Humanities is affecting. Here, water in the novel is a site of destruction and ecosystem. We have the example from the novel is of a dead zone, which is caused by the industrial development is happening, and the dolphin beaching incident, and the Rani's alarming coming of the incident. So that all incidents are connected with how the water is being an active agent in shaping the narratives of the. And Khan in his article say that, I quote, "The Sundarban section of the Gun Island offer a microcosm view of a global south victim of historical and ongoing injustice, further victimized by climate change, unquote. So global south particularly having a vast area of water and connected with that, and that's why they are facing all the more issues regarding the climate change. And in the novel, the Ghosh is trying to depict this as well. Talking about the Anthropocene and eco-precarity, the framework is developed by Dipesh Chakraborty and Pramod Nair. And this highlights the how in this age humans are at the center, human-centric view we have, and the critique of that. And similarly, this framework is also applied in the Amitav Ghosh Gun Island as well, that humans are decentered and the animals and the rather natural world is at the center. So there is an ethnographic surrealism. So this means that there is a combination of folklore, myth, and that is connecting the narrative. We have the real myth of it as a Bandhi Sodagar. And he connected that folklore and the myth of Mansa Devi and combined this to talk about how to critique the anthroposonic point of view. Another thing is planetary consciousness. So by connecting disparate locals like Sundarban, Los Angeles, and Venice, Ghosh evokes the global awareness of anthroposonic's interconnected crisis. So not just only using one place or to talk about that, he connected multiple places to showcase that the climate change is a global issue. Migration and the fluidity of borders. So this is what the novel is tied to, the water's instability. And the main reason, particularly in the novel, is the migration through which the migration is happening is the water. Migration in the novel is both literal, like climate refugee. We have the example of Rafi and Tipu and Kabir and Bilal. Four of the characters are migrated due to the water issues, and metaphorically like fluid identity. So they have the identity crisis as well due to this migration. So here the ocean is both barrier and path, reinforcing De Logre's theory of transoceanic identity. So in this transoceanic identity, she talked about how this identity is made by migration, like people having an identity crisis because they are now a hybrid and not acceptable at any of the place. And that time, how the identity is made. Tipu and Rafi's journey is from Bangladesh to Europe. This symbolizes even the crisis of how the Tipu and Kabir and Bilal, particularly the incident of Kabir and Bilal, where one of the friend is lost his life due to this migration. So that is also affected by water. Gilson in his article said, I quote, Ghosh overplays planet onto place and consciously conceals material space, showing how the climate crisis has pervaded every place on earth, global south and global north, unquote. So Ghosh is trying to merge everything. And the merchant's mythic journey to Venice is also reflecting this. Contemporary example from this is we are having one of the article by Something Weird is Happening by Rishika Aradhya, in which she talked about that how in the Nepal there is a transformation of the 1.3 billion of population due to this migration crisis. And even between the 1950s to 2016, around the Bangladesh area, there is an erosion of more than 235 square kilometers place, coastal areas. So this is also reflecting how the migration is very much contemporary. Mythology, memory, and sacred waters. As we all have already introduction to this, so snake goddess Mansa in this, and even the Madonna, both are connecting force to talk about how these water is there at the center. Mansa links the water with spiritual and ecological precarity, as we talked about hydrofeminism. So novel juxtaposes Venice and Sundarban, showing how water erase history and reshape identities. Chatterjee in his article says, I quote, myth have ability to reach out to future. They are portals to belief, not bound by institutionalized religion, unquote. So by using religion, Ghosh is trying to talk about the water crisis in that. And even this idea of coexistence of all creatures on the earth. So my conclusion for this presentation is Gun Island illustrate transoceanic connection, mirroring historical and contemporary displacement. Myth and ecology intertwines, showing water as a bearer of memory and change. And the novel critiques anthropocenic include eco-precarity, reinforcing blue humanities discourse with aquatic ecologies, and particularly water in this Gun Island is a force of both destruction and transformation, aligning with blue humanities. And as climate change accelerates, Gun Island serves as a literal intervention, compelling us to reimagine environmental justice. Before I show my work cited, I would like to add my learning outcome, which I haven't added in the slides. So my learning, particularly my motive behind preparing this presentation was I wasn't able to give the right answer in this net examination about who coined the term blue humanities, and that's why I focused on this topic so that I can cover that. And by going through this all the presentation, I learned how water's role is there and being aware about that. These are the works cited, and thank you. If you have any question, feel free to ask.
So Dhatri, my question is that how does Gun Island use water's dual role as a conduit and barrier to challenge human-centered narratives of migration history and ecological crisis?
Okay, so let me start from Tipu and Rafi's example. So here, Tipu and Rafi migrated due to this water crisis is happening, and particularly they are not having a proper place to live, and that's why they transferred from one place to another. So the one place like water is the medium through which they transported to the Italy. So as in that way, water is a place through which it in a positive way, whereas they have to displace their self from their native land. That is the destructive part of the water. Of talking about the migration, talking about history, area is erased. And here, from the example of Bangladesh, like Bangladesh, no, Amitav Ghosh tried to portray the harsh reality of Bangladesh, how numbers of people have to leave the Bangladesh, and they migrated quite like not ethically but unethically or illegally migrated to the other places. So this is also something related to history, that reality, and that was captured by Amitav Ghosh in the novel. And talking about ecological crisis, so like we have the dead zone in the novel, Rani's example is there, even Tipu having a kind of omen kind of things when something is happening. So these all the things, even the snake goddess, the myths of Mansa Devi and myth of Madonna, where she's talking about the plague and all the things and how the Madonna helped. So all these are helping to talk about the novel. So I hope that answered your question.
So Dhatri Ghosh addresses the issues of climate change in his novel. Based on your study on the novel and other sources, could you elaborate on possible solution to this problem?
Yes, in the work Great Derangement, Ghosh talked about how literature can help to address the issue of climate change. And with the example of Gun Island, he did the same. So, based on my reading of that, when we want to say something about climate change, because the people believe more in religion rather than talking about science. So religion, by using like Ghosh masterfully used myths to convey his message. So in that way we can convey, as even Jayashri mentioned about this uh, local myths we have. So we can incorporate local myths, we can incorporate local myths to convey the idea that we have to preserve nature. And in that way the uneducated mass can also follow the path which was shown by religion. So this one solution we can do to address the climate change, and the possible solution for that we incorporate religion and ask religious leader to take advantage of that and making convince people about the crisis. Yes, thank you.
So this was good example of learning outcome. So, as we told, the learning outcome means how personally you learned something from this, not generally. It is fine. Generally, what people might learn, that is, we can understand. But what are your personal learning outcome? Why? What effect did it give? That is very important when you talk about learning outcome from literatures. Okay?
Hello everyone, I am Yasraj Soda, and on the paper of contemporary literature in English, I am making my presentation on the topic The Past We Choose, Memory Manipulation in the Only Story and Shutter Island movie. This is my academic details. My research question for this presentation: how do The Only Story and Shutter Island depict memory manipulation through unreliable narration? And what does this reveal about the relationship between trauma, self-deception, and subjective reality? My hypothesis of this presentation: memory is not a fixed record of the past, but malleable constructs of only story and the Shutter Island, who manipulates their memories to protect themselves from painful truths. So, shall I start from the beginning?
Yes, start.
Hello everyone, I am Yesraj Soda, and on the contemporary literature in English, I am presenting my topic, The Past We Choose, Memory Manipulation in the Only Story and Shutter Island movie. This is my academic details. My research question for this presentation is how do the Only Story and Shutter Island depict memory manipulation through unreliable narration, and what does this reveal about the relationship between trauma, self-deception, and subjective reality? My hypothesis is a memory is not fixed record of the past, but a malleable construct shaped by emotional needs, trauma, and self-deception, as seen in the unreliable narrator of the Only Story and Shutter Island, who manipulate their memories to protect themselves from the painful truths. The novel, The Only Story, it is written by Julian Barnes, and The Shutter Island, which is the movie directed by Martin Scorsese, and it is based on the novel by Dennis Lehane with the same title. Now, first, the role of unreliable narrator. The concept is given by Booth. The memory as a defensive mechanism. The memory is not recording of the fact, but reconstruction influenced by the emotions. Unreliable narrators alter reality to protect themselves from the painful truths. Let's discuss our two protagonists from the novel and the movie. First, from the novel, Paul Roberts. He romanticizes the past, selective memory, filters out the painful details to preserve the ideal version of love. In the beginning, we find that how he described the Susan and the love affair goes between them two. So the quote we also find from the novel: memory sorts and shift according to the demands made on it by the rememberer. As we discussed in the class also, that the Paul is the more reliable, unreliable narrator, because in his own telling of the story, in his own narration, he falsifies himself. He says that I don't keep the diary, and again he says that I keep the diary. So that sees that contradictions and self-doubt moves between first, second, and third narration, reflecting the emotional detachment. First, we find that he is narrating the story in the first person, later second in the third. Do all these things from the quote, do all these things relating brings me closer to the truth or furthering away? I'm not sure. The role of the unreliable narrator in the movie, and the character of Teddy Daniels from the Shutter Island, escaping trauma, constructing false reality, creates a detective persona of the escape his identity as Andrew Ledis, and believes in the government conspiracy instead of facing his hallucination and delusions, like sees vision of his wife's children and war experience. Trauma distorts his perception of reality. The Saburi and in his article argues that Andrew's psyche is fragmented due to the past trauma and guilt. Final choice, as we find the famous dialogue also, embracing the lie or the truth, chooses to remain in the delusion rather than to face in the pain in the past. In the last movie scene, we find which would be, he himself says that which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man. So he himself is like in the self delusion that what to do. Psychological distortions and the trauma we find in the Paul Robbins, love loss and the memory distortion, reframe his past and avoid emotional suffering. Memory sorts and shifts according to the demands made on it by the rememberer. We choose what we want to remember, and we forget the things we don't want to remember. His perspective changes over time. Initially sees Susan as his great love, like he sees like I am doing some like going against the tradition, and this love is like untraditional love, but later recognizes her flaws and become clings to his idealized version. A denial of emotional pain. Even when he acknowledges loss, he remains stuck in his only story rather than moving forward. In the other part, we find Teddy Daniels in the Shutter Island. Trauma-induced hallucination, as we have discussed in the past also. He hallucinates his wife and the war and the detective background of his. So he hallucinates repressive as a survival mechanism. Construct an envelope detective fantasy to avoid confronting his guilt. War trauma adds another layer of psychological burden and reinforcing his delusion. Memory hacking, it is also one concept that we construct our own memory by hacking our own self. Our mind tricks us. Memory is shapeable and can be manipulated, as Singh argue in his article that memories are not fixed record but reconstructed narratives. People unconsciously alter, omit, and distort memories to fit personal beliefs and emotion. How do we find in the novel how Paul's memory is hacked, romanticizes Susan and their relationship despite of this emotional suffering that we have seen before also. Memory prioritizes whatever is most painful to help keep the bearer to those memories going. That he himself argues that in the novel. Selective forgetting ignores Susan's alcoholism and their decline relationship to preserve the illusion of love. Narrative paradox claims to tell the only story, yet constantly revises it and over time. He says that I am being the truthful person. I try to be a truthful person, but later part we find that he himself also distorts his own memory and the narratives. How Teddy's memory is hacked suppresses reality and constructs a detective fantasy. Teddy has locked himself into the fantasy world, rejecting memories too painful to bear. Hallucinations his wife, as we have discussed, false perception of the reality. His mind fills in the gap with the delusion rather than the confronting the truth. Trust or truth? Can we ever know the reality? Truth is subjective and shaped by the perception. Memory is unreliable. What we recall is influenced by the emotion and bias. Both the only story and Shutter Island challenge the idea of objective truth. Paul's struggle with the truth we find clings to an idealized past despite of the contradictions. In the quote we find, do all this retelling brings me closer to the truth or move further away? I am not sure. He himself argues that it is moving towards the truth or the false. Selective memory protects him from the emotional plane. In the Teddy's case, we find he rejects the reality of embrace the lie because it is easier than facing the reality. In the conclusion, we can say that the memory is reconstructed and not recorded. Unreliable narrators alter their past to cope with the pain, trauma, and self deception, distort the reality. Takeaway from the presentation, we can say truth is subjective and shaped by the memory. We remember what we can emotionally handle, not what truly happen. Do we accept reality or create a version we can live with? So that is the ultimate question, as Paul says in the novel also. My learning outcome from the novel is most of the novels or any literature we find that we see the history, we see the past, we see the characters, but the Paul brings us to introspect ourselves. Like, are we telling the lie to ourselves? So it gives me the ability, or we can say the learning to how to see ourselves, how to see ourselves, how we shape our memory, and how we tell the truth. While we are telling our own story, still we distort the memory and the story. So that is also I have learned from the presentation and also from the novel. These are my references, and I also take the help of from ChatGPT to organize the content and for rectifying the grammatical errors. Now for the questions.
So, Yashraj, my question is, if Paul from The Only Story and Teddy from Shutter Island were meet, what do you think they would say to each other about memory and truth?
That's an interesting question. If they were to meet, I think the Paul is he is telling the story, but still he is honest to himself. Because while telling the story, he himself says that I am also responsible for the fall of Susan and the past mistakes that he has made, and he is distorting his memory. While in the Teddy's character is in the novel or in the movie, we find that he is living in the self delusion. So we might face that he sometimes hallucinates, he sometimes forget himself, if the Pole, we can say, still he tells the real mistakes that he has made in the past. But in the Teddy's case, we are still in the doubt that he himself will tell the reality, or the tell that my memory distorts or I hallucinate or not. So that would be the discussion between the two if they were to match.
Yashraj, my question is for you. Like this term unreliable, reliable narrator has emerged in 20th century due to this World War II. So, do you think reading unreliable narrators like Paul and Teddy helps people to become skeptical of political leaders' speech?
Yes, I definitely agree with this statement. Like whenever we see unreliable narrator or telling the story, these narratives makes us more skeptical of with whatever is being told. Like as we do the experiment of ourselves also. Like whenever we tell something, we like taking ourselves in a good side also. Whenever we are telling the story, like I am the hero of the story. So whenever any politicians or they are making any statement, there are higher possibilities that they are telling the truth rather than the lie. Or like in the personal telling of the story, like in the Paul or Teddy, they don't have to give any like propaganda. They don't have to make their party win. But in the politicians, we also find that they have to tell people that we are the righteous people and we are telling the truth. Are also like can be falsified, and they are also the can be defined as the unreliable narrator. So that is from my side. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to my presentation, Liar, Liar, Plot on Fire. A study of, well, you know them, you love them, unreliable narrators. These are my academic information, and this is my research question. How do unreliable narrators in The Only Story, The Great Gatsby, The Sense of an Ending, and The Remains of the Day manipulate memory, perception, and truth? And what effect does this have on the reader's interpretation of reality? My hypothesis for this presentation is that unreliable narrators in these novels manipulate memory and personal biases to present a distorted version of events, compare uncover hidden truth. The narrative technique not only adds psychological depth to the character, but also emphasizes the elusive nature of objective reality. Let me first introduce you to the unreliable narrator. So, an unreliable narrator is basically somebody whose credibility is compromised. So, you as a reader are unsure whether their version of events is true or not. They make you question their events. This term was coined by Wayne C. Booth in 1961, and he introduces it like this: I have called a narrator reliable when he speaks for or acts in accordance with the norms of the work, which is to say, the implied author's norms, unreliable when he does not. So here there is this question of implied author as well, that why an author has written this text, and what is the philosophy of author, what the ideas the author wants to convey, and does the narrator align with them or not. And that is Wayne C. Booth's definition. After that, there has been a lot of debate on this. Here I have taken Zervek's article, and in that he presents these 4 key characteristics of unreliable narrator. That it is a very the unreliable narrator is a very human-like figure, because it is very natural to rely on your memory, and it is very natural for your memory to be biased towards yourself. The unreliable narrator, they unknowingly reveal their own reliability. So this happens unknowingly, they are not sure, but they make one mistake or two, three such sentences that makes you think that maybe they are not reliable. Unreliable changes based on societal values and literary norms. Now, this is something Zerbeck argues, that if you see olden works, so when they were written, the narrators were not considered unreliable. Now that we see them through modern lens, we see that they may have been unreliable. There is also the question of reader's interpretation, and for this, Zerbeck actually gives the example of Midnight's Children. He says that if Midnight's Children is read by somebody from the West, then they would question Salim as an unreliable narrator. But this would not happen in India, because we are accustomed to this type of storytelling where somebody is all messed up. But because of our wide mythological background, we are aware of that, and we are quite accepting of that also. Let me give you a brief historical overview of unreliable narrators. So the birth of unreliable narrator can be traced in 18th century, because that was the time for realistic novels, and so they were more diverting their attention towards objective storytelling rather than subjective one. In 19th century, we see limited use of unreliable narration, but we see it in Gothic literature. So we have Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So these works like that, works in that genre used unreliable narration, but it was not in the mainstream. In the early 20th century, or modernism as we call it, we see the rise of epistemological skepticism. There is the question of whether the things you know are correct or not, whether your knowledge is reliable or not. And because of that, we see in postmodernism in the mid 20th century to present, unreliability stops being like this out of the box thing, and it becomes a very regular thing in postmodernist novels, because they accept that human beings are unreliable. And the first character that we are going to analyze as an unreliable narrator is Paul Roberts from The Only Story. This is the basic information about that. So as you all know that it is about Paul. He's an old man now, and he's thinking back to his affair with Susan. So Paul doubts his own memory. Why do we say that he's an unreliable narrator? So number one reason to it and changes it. He makes some kind of editing to it. So here I have presented one quote. Do all these retelling bring you closer to the truth of what happened, or move you further away? I'm not sure. So he's not sure of his own narration, or whether his narration is true or not. Then there is the question of inconsistent chronology, because Paul does this, that he says something and then he goes that, okay, but this event happened before that, that event happened after that. This is actually a technique of confusing the reader, we can say, because then you are thinking that, okay, how did it happen? You are thinking about the chronology of the sequence, and in that he may have hidden something. So here is an example of that also, that this is from the novel. He says this, that he's starting to say something, and he says that, and this would have happened earlier, but I'm only remembering it now. Then there is also the shifting narrative perspective. We see that Paul did this, that he started the novel with first person narration, and then he moved on to second and third. So we can argue that he is making a distance between himself and his narration, between his story and his narration. There is also self-preservation and rosy retrospection. So there is no doubt that Paul sees himself, or his past at least, in these rose-colored glasses. He likes to think of things that were more happy, more cheerful than they actually were. And here is the quote for that. He says that you remembered your past event in cheerful terms because this validated your existence. And he says that still an optimistic memory might make it easier to part from life, might soften the pain of extinction. So he says he accepts this as well, that it is okay for memory to be biased towards oneself. And at last, there is also the paradox of the only story. Now, here in the article, we find that there is this paradox given by the author, that Paul starts by saying that this is the only story worth telling, this is the only story that matters. But in the end, he's not quite sure of his own narration. He is not sure of the way the things happened, or whether he is narrating them in truth or not.
So we see here the paradox of only story, that is it actually just one story? Of an ending. This is another work of Julian Barnes. It is also quite similar because Tony Webster is also a retired man. He's looking back at his past. But one thing that happens here is that he gets a secret diary of his friend. And because of that, there is a clash between how the events he remembered and how they are recorded in that diary. So he is made to confront his own perception. So Tony also questions his own memories. He starts by saying that what you end up remembering isn't always the same as what you have witnessed. So he's accepting that memory is changeable. And he says he accepts this fault of his memory. He says that if I can't be sure of the actual events anymore, I can at least be true to the impression those facts left. That's the best I can manage. There is also inconsistency and contradictory memory of Tony Webster as well, because he also has this mistake of chronology. He does not remember the things in a particular order. There is also omission or editing of key information. Now, this is something unreliable narrators do very often, where they miss the key facts or key information. They left them out intentionally to portray themselves as a hero. One example that comes to mind is Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World, where the protagonist did this again and again, where he would omit the things that would make him, that would portray him in the bad light. There is also the self-serving nature of memory of Tony Webster. He accepts this as well, that I have an instinct for survival, for self-preservation. Perhaps this is what Veronica called cowardice, and I called being peaceful. So we see that he's accepting this also, that yes, my memory serves me only. He talks about how he uses memory for self-preservation. He has a strong survival instinct, and because of that, he would do certain things that we might not consider moral or correct. There is also he is unable to achieve closure. Now, this is a very important factor because in the novel is titled "The Sense of an Ending." But at the end, Tony is only filled with this great unrest. He found out after reading the diary, like the fact written down in the documentation clashes with his own memories, and he is not able to understand this. He's not able to make his peace with it. And when he finds out that his memory is actually unreliable, there is great unrest in him. So in the end, he is not able to achieve a closure or a peaceful mindset. In fact, he is deeply stirred by everything. Another famous unreliable narrator is Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby. Nick is from my presentation, Nick is the only unreliable narrator who is not actually the protagonist of his story, but a side character. Nick also has this contradiction in his self-perception. He begins the novel by saying that I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, that I will not judge people. But time and again, he starts judging people, namely, there is also moral inconsistencies, because when Nick Carraway finds out about Tom's affair with Myrtle, he deeply criticizes him. He says that it is wrong, and he shows this moral front. But when Gatsby wants to get together with Daisy, Nick helps him. So isn't that inconsistent? And so we see his moral inconsistency. We see compromises and hypocrisy of Nick Carraway as well. Many times he compromises this. We see because of the affair of Tom Buchanan, he's deeply criticizing him. Daisy, on the other hand, killed Myrtle, although it was an accident, but she ended up killing somebody. And still, Nick didn't say anything about that. In fact, he maintained his silence in front of the authorities as well. So he helped in that crime. There is also a distorted view of Gatsby and American Dream. We know this after reading the novel, that he thinks Gatsby is some great man. But how can we forget that he's actually a bootlegger? All the wealth that he boasts of, that is made from wrongful means. So we see a distorted view of Gatsby, and there is a distorted view of American Dream as well. American Dream is basically that anybody can find success in America. And Nick tries to portray himself as such. In the ending, he gives this quote that, so we beat on, boats against current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So he goes on to say, ends on a very hopeful note, and he says that I will do all the things necessary to achieve, like we should all do the things to be better from our past. We should do this. And in this manner, he tries to portray himself as the normal person. But that is not actually true, because he himself is also quite wealthy. He comes from wealth. He does not have to think of his next meal like the other minor characters in the novel. And there is also this question of emotional bias towards Daisy. That I already gave you the example of how he is biased towards Daisy. He ignores her crimes actually. And he says, in the very first time he met Daisy, he said this, that it was the kind of voice that the ear follows up and down, as if each speech is an arrangement of notes that will never be played again. So from this line, we can see the fascination he has towards Daisy. So we can say there is Nick Carraway is biased towards Gatsby and Daisy, both of them. The last narrator that I'm going to talk about is Stevens from Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. He is actually a butler and he is going to a road trip. And in that road trip, he's thinking about everything. He actually got a letter from his former housekeeper, Miss Kenton. And Miss Kenton is right now married. So he gets that letter and he thinks that maybe she's an unhappy marriage and maybe I should go there and give her this employment back. So we see Stevens is an unreliable narrator because of his psychological repression. So Stephen tries to be this proper butler again and again. He stops his emotions. He represses himself from feeling anything, from saying the truth, from behaving a certain way. And because of this psychological repression, we can see that he is quite unreliable because we don't know what he truly feels about things. There is also his verbal patterns and self-deception that look at this quote. He is talking about his father here, that I realize that if one looks at the matter objectively, one has to concede that my father lacked various attributes one may normally expect in a great butler. So here he is talking about his own father in such a distant manner. So he has distanced himself from all of them. And he also, we see these type of verbal patterns. He is, of course, deeply wounded by this, but he refuses to grieve him. He refuses himself any sort of emotion. It's a self-deception that I don't really care. I'm a butler. I should not show these kind of emotions. So we see self-deception. There is also the conflict between scene and commentary. So this happens that he's the narrator, so he says something, and when it is time to act, he goes around and does something entirely different. So we see this in when Miss Kenton's aunt dies. So he's very sympathetic towards her. He's thinking that I should comfort her if she's grieving and everything. But in the very next scene, he goes around and criticizes her for work not well done. There is also need for justification and defensiveness. We see that he makes a lot of justifications for himself and he becomes defensive for a long time. He says, let me make perfectly clear, let me make it immediately clear, I should clear this out through statement like these. There is also Stephen's late realization. At the end of the novel, we have this realization. He realizes the unreliability of his memory, or how his own perception was flawed from the beginning. And here in the last, he gives this quote that I'm inclined to believe I may well have read more into certain of her lines than perhaps was wise. Here he is talking about the housekeeper's letter, because of which he traveled the entire journey. And at the end, he's thinking that maybe she's not in an unhappy marriage. Maybe she was just remembering the past. So he accepts this realizations. So conclusion from all of these unreliable narrator, we see that memory is basically an unreliable tool. We cannot of emotional bias in characters as well as in the people we meet in our lives. And but these unreliable narrators force us to have an active role as a reader, because we are forced to see what they are omitting, where they are being silent, what they are hiding. So this puts us in a very active role. Otherwise, we would just be listening to a story. So to conclude, I would say that despite their differences, these works collectively highlight a crucial idea that truth is really objective, and personal experiences inevitably shape how stories are told and remembered. They add psychological depth to the character while challenging readers to confront the unsettling notion that truth is often elusive and subjective. My learning outcome from this presentation was that it made me question that whether there is any storyteller that can ever be truly objective. So no matter the storyteller who is telling the official stories, like the authors in our books, or like the friends we meet in our lives, the people we deal with daily. So can we really believe them, their perception, their memories, and their version of stories? These are my references, and thank you. Now for your questions.
My question is, Muiba, among all the unreliable narrators you have studied, which one do you find the most compelling in making themselves an unreliable narrator?
The most compelling in making themselves an unreliable narrator, I think that would be Stevens after studying about the remains of the day, because he is totally convinced. See him doubt, he just omits that. This is something that Kazuo Ishiguro's characters does often, because he has explored unreliable narrator in The Artist of the Floating World and Never Let Me Go as well. So all of his unreliable narrators do this, that they are very human, and they would say it so convincingly that it takes you a moment to question whether they are unreliable narrators or not.
Bhumi, my question is for you. Does reading an unreliable narrator makes you question the people around you? And what would be the more interesting way to experience unreliable narrator, movies or novels?
I would be saying novels, because I am quite biased towards them, because an unreliable narrator in novel is always more interesting. As for questioning the people around me, not only the people and it makes me question that whether I'm being an unreliable narrator to myself right now whenever I'm remembering anything. So yeah, I would say it has had a deep impact. And but there is also downside that now I will never trust anybody, I feel. And thank you.
A very good afternoon, everyone. I am Darshan Wagh, and I am here with the presentation Susan McLeod's Journey, Unraveling the Depths of Existential Thoughts. This is my academic information. So my hypothesis for this presentation is Susan McLeod's Journey in the Only Story by Julian Barnes exemplifies existential themes of absurdity, freedom, and isolation, demonstrating that the search of meaning often leads to disillusionment rather than fulfillment. My research question for this presentation is, how does Susan McLeod's journey in the only story reflect the existentialist struggle for meaning in an indifferent world? So about the author Julian Barnes, he is a British novelist, essayist, and a short story writer, and he is very famous for his work, The Sense of Ending, which won the Man Booker Prize. And his works are often explores themes like history, love, and memory. About the story, about the novel, The Only Story. So the novel explores the complexity of love and relationship through Paul's retrospective narration, and it follows Paul's romance with Susan, beginning in the 1960 when he was 19 and Susan was 48. It examines the emotional and psychological impact of the unconventional love affair, highlights it shows how past relationship shapes personal understanding and future perspectives. Absurdity in the only story. So, life's absurdity is revealed through the conflict between the human search for meaning and the universe's irrational chaos. And we can find these things in Susan's case, where her childhood trauma, marked by her uncle's betrayal, exposed the randomness of suffering and injustice. Her marriage to Gordon, and a violent alcoholic, turns what should be a safe haven into a site of relentless torment. Her affair with Paul offers a temporary relief, but ultimately leads to obsession, disillusionment, and self destruction. Dementia robs Susan for her identity, reinforces existentialist idea that life is indifferent to human struggles. create their own meaning through choices and actions. In Susan's marriage to Gordon, she was trapped her in fear, oppression, and abuse, taking away her independence. And her affair with Paul, in her way of breaking free, rejecting society's rule to regain control over her life. As Barnes writes that for our here Paul is this dialogue is by Paul, and he's saying this to Susan that for her our joint sake, but mainly for hers, she had to scrub this mistake from her life and give herself a legal as well as the moral freedom to be happy. And being happy consists of living with me alone and unfettered. So Paul is providing his perspective that Susan has to divorce her husband, and for her happiness she has to live with Paul. So here we see the selfishness of Paul, and the choices that Susan has made had come with high prices, and she loses her family, respect, and stability in pursuit of personal freedom. The pursuit of Susan McLeod's journey reflects this search for self-definition. Childhood trauma and betrayal leave Susan struggle with the identity, self-worth, and a sense of existential security. Her abusive marriage to Gordon reinforces her alienation, distorting love into domination and deepening her search for meaning. Susan's affair with Paul represents her quest for identity, freedom, and meaning beyond societal norms, offering a temporary passion and connection. Authenticity and self-creation. Susan initially lives inauthentically trapped in an abusive marriage that suppresses her true self and personal desires. Her affairs with Paul represent a bold act of self-creation, allowing her to break free from societal roles and embrace authenticity. Susan sacrificed her domestic life and relationships to pursue authenticity, rejecting a societal expectation to author her own narrative. Her affair with Paul serves an overreaction and desperate attempt to reclaim agency after years of oppressive inauthenticity. Existential isolation. Despite the deep relationship, Susan remains fundamentally alone, as a subjective experience cannot be fully shared or understood. Her affair with Paul offers intimacy, but past trauma and their age gaps create an emotional divide. Alcoholism and mental illness worsen her isolation, disconnecting her from both Paul and her own identity. Susan's life reflects the existentialist truth that people coexist yet remain trapped in their own inner world. So to conclude my presentation, Susan McLeod's life deeply reflects existentialist idea of freedom, loneliness, and self-discovery. She struggles to find meaning while facing isolation, heartbreak, and hardship. Her battle with alcoholism, dementia highlights life's uncertainties. Her journey challenges societal norms, true understanding remain out of reach. My learning outcome for this presentation is that the theory of existentialism and its application to various novels, characters, and real life incident taught us that true freedom always comes with consequences. Every choices shape our destiny in a way we might not expect. Breaking free from constraint isn't enough. We must also take responsibility for the outcomes of our decisions. And no matter how deep our connections are, we remain fundamentally alone in our experiences. Meaning isn't something we find in others, but something we create ourselves, forcing us to confront life's uncertainties and it shapes our own purpose. These are my references, and thank you. Now I would like to have your questions.
So Darshan, my question is, how responsible would you say is Paul in this mental condition of Susan, and would she be better off if she had never met him?
So, in my point of view, Paul was 19 years old and he was enthusiastic and youthfulness, but Susan was 48 years old. She was matured woman, but still she commits this mistake. So I think, in my point of view, Susan, I think if Susan wouldn't have met Paul, Paul would be having a good life.
Darshan, my question is, besides Susan's character, do you find elements of existential philosophy in any other character of the only story?
I personally find existential philosophy in every character, but especially Susan's character deals with too much trauma and existential dilemmas. And besides Susan, I find existential philosophy in Paul's life. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a presentation. My topic, presentation topic is Revolution 2020: Education, Corruptions, and Politics. This is my personal information. Table of content, and this presentation related research questions. How does Revolution 2020 define the commercialized and corruption of the Indian education system, and what impact does it have on students' appreciation and moralities? Hypothesis: Revolution 2020 portrays the Indian education system as a profit-driven enterprise where coaching institute, political influence, and bribery overshadows of merit and fairness. The novel suggests that this system not only affects student academic and career opportunity, but also forces them into moral dilemmas, leading to either a resistance, Raghav, or a submission, Gopal. Introduction about the novel Revolution 2020 by Chetan Bhagat, 2011. A love triangle set against theme of corruption, ambition, and education. Why is this topic important? The Indian education system is highly competitive, but increasingly commercialized. Corruption shape politics and career opportunities. Rise key questions: can any individual fight against the corruption system? Main characters and the broken education system. Gopal Mishra embodies corruption and survival in the flow system. Raghav Kashyap stands for idealism and the fight against the corruptions. Aarti Pratap Pradhan represent the personal ambitions and moral dilemmas. How their choice reflect key themes: education, struggle in the coaching system, college and admissions, corruption, bribery and political influence in education, politics, power dynamics affecting careers and opportunities. The broken education system in India, extreme competitions, pressure on students, commercialized coaching culture, focus on profit over learning, limited opportunities lead to unethically shortcut. Education system in Revolution 2020. The novel portrayed the Indian education system as a deeply flawed, where success in it often detected by money and influence rather than merit. Coaching centers take advantage of students' disappreciation to get into IITs and the top college, turning education into a business rather than a learning experience. Briberies and donation-based admission allow wealthy students to secure seats in prestigious institutions. The Intense competition create immense pressures for forcing students to resort to unethical means such as cheatings or using a political influence to secure their future. Real life relevance, the coaching exam pressures, quota coaching culture. Quota is home to thousands of coaching institutes preparing students for IIT, JEE, and NEET. The extreme pressure to suicide has led to rising mental health crises and student suicides. JEE, NEET, and the competition trap. Indian has some of the thoughtest extents exam globally, including NEET, JEE, and UPSC. Lakhs of students compete for a limited numbers of seats, creating an environment street and anxiety. Education become a battle for survival rather than a pursuit of knowledge. Politics in Revolution 2020, politic influence in education, politics own and control colleges using them at a profit-making business rather than institution of learning. Corrupt leaders grant approvals and manipulated admissions and exploit students for financial and political gains. Education become a tool for power and money rather than a means to empower society. Real life relevance, political interference in education. Politics owning education institute. Many politics own private universities, using them as a profit making ventures rather than centers of learning. Servals, MPs, and MLS in India have direct stakes in engineering and medical college, influencing admission and uh, poli- uh, policies for personal gain. Education policies favoring the elites. Policies often benefit wealthy urban students, leaving a rural and underprivileged students behind. High fees in private institute make quality education assembles only the privilege and deepening the divide between the rich and the poor. Does Revolution 2020 offer hope? Raghav fight against corruption. Raghav tried to expose corruption through generalism but faced obstacles and struggles to make a lasting impact. Gopal choice. Gopal embeds idealism and embrace corruption, prioritize personal success over revolutions. Bhagat's message, one individual may not be enough to change the system. However, collective awareness and action can lead to gradual reform in education and politics. Real life relevance can change happens. Student protect and activism. FIT and GNU protect and anti-NEET protect highlights issues in the education system. Students demand fair policies, transparency, and the end of corruption. Collective action has lead to policy discuss and reinforce uh, technology as a disruptor. Online education's platform like Coursera and the Unacademic Challenges Tradition Coaching Institute increased accessibility to quality education, reduce the dependence on corrupt systems. Social media spread awareness about the scam and corruptions, pushing from accountability. Conclusion, Revolution 2020 sheds light on the deep-rooted flaw in Indian's education system and the intersections of politics and corruption. Through the contrasting journey of Raghav and Gopal, the novel explore the tension between idealism and pragmatism, questioning whether individual and corruption system. While the novel present a bleak reality, it also emphasized the need for awareness and collective actions. Systematic change may be difficult, but it is necessary to ensure education remain a tool of empowerment rather than a business controlled by money and influence. The story encourage reflection on the role of individual and society in shaping a fairer future. This is my reference. Thank you. If you anyone have question to please ask.
So, Vishwa, my question is, what message does the author convey about the role of youth in changing the system?
The novel encourage youth to challenge a corrupt system and bring to and bring positive changes. And the character struggles show how younger younger educations to social norms and systematic flow create a better future.
Shwa, my question is, how does the novel portray the impact of personal choices on society?
uh, the novel show how personal decision the novel show how personal decision whenever ethical or not can while reaching effect on society and include for a corrupt system. And while artist's choice steer her into the more successfully and morally unright your life. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Akash Chawda, and for the contemporary English literature's paper, I have chosen the topic of graveyard as a secular sanctuary in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. These are my academic details. And our major quest in this presentation is that how Arundhati Roy has reimagined the graveyard, which is traditionally associated with mourning and death. So that we will see in this presentation. Published in 2017, by Arundhati Roy, the Ministry of Utmost Happiness follows a mosaic of characters. We know that this novel is a rather bulky novel, and with so many characters in it, and there are so many chapterization of the novel also we can find in there, like Kwabga, Dandakaranya, Kashmir Valley, and the Jannat Guest House. All those things are there in the novel, and these all the situations and events of the novels are set against the backdrop of the politically charged India. Like we know that there are many events are portrayed oppressed create alternative forms of community and identity. So my research question for this presentation would be how Roy portray the graveyard in the novel functions as a secular sanctuary for marginalized communities, and what does it reveal about the politics of the space. And hypothesis would be how Roy reimagines the graveyard as a heterotopic space that subverts traditional religious and cultural binaries, providing a refuge for the marginalized. This transformation not only challenges oppressive power structure, but also facilitates the creation of the alternatives that we will see in this presentation. And for the theoretical frameworks, the insights by French philosopher and polymath Michel Foucault is relevant, and his insights on in his which he presented in the preface of his seminal work, The Order of the Things, in which he talks about the heterotopic places. These places are real and concrete places which exist outside of the mainstream society. These places are world within the world. So these spaces are marked by their ability to accommodate those who exist in a state of crisis. And we know that in the novel, there are multiple characters who are driven by the identity crisis or other crises also. And particularly the character of Anjum, we find that she is having identity crisis. And after facing the 2002 riots and witnessing the murder of Zakir Mia, she has that identity crisis, and she left the Kwabga and started his guest At one level, it is segregated from the mainstream society, and also it is connected with the mainstream society also. They create a counter sites. Graveyard are other spaces that invert conventional and social orders, and it also, in a way, divert from the mainstream society, and also it challenges the politics of the day. Traditional versus secular interpretation of the graveyards. Graveyards, as we know, that in the Muslim community, Shall I start, sir? Okay. Well, in this way, the graveyard functions not merely as a backdrop, but as a vibrant and living character in the story, because it gives accommodation to various marginalized communities, and including Hijras, Dalit, and other peoples. Reimagining the graveyard as a sanctuary of resistance and renewals. Arundhati Roy envisions a forbidden conversation between the two graveyards. She says that in this novel there are two graveyards. One is physical and one is metaphorical. The physical graveyard is that in which Anjum creates and established this Jannat guest house. And the metaphorical graveyard is Kashmir. We see that traditionally Kashmir has been referred to as a paradise of India. But after the but in today's time, in the because of the local politics and the Kashmir insurgency and all sorts of things are there, so it is no longer remained as much as such a paradise, but it has transferred into the metaphorically graveyard, which she tries to connect. And she says that the whole novel is a conversation between these two graveyards, Kashmir Valley and the Anjums established the Jannat guest house. Arundhati Roy says that graveyard covered with a Jannat guest house and the Jannat, which is Kashmir, covered with a graveyard. While such reconfigurations are taboo in real life, fictions frees these spaces from normative constraint and subverting the conventional meanings of death and memory. And by challenging these fake historical narratives and oppressive social norms, the graveyard becomes a powerful symbol of collective identity and renewal. This graveyard act as gives agency to characters to perform in their life, and this also gives the purpose in their life also. The graveyard as a cultural and political space. Graveyard, as I've said, that serves as a dynamic home, and it challenges the static notions of the belonging. It also destabilizes the binaries such as life and death. We see that the graveyard is always associated with the death, but in that also, the graveyard provides life and love and human care to all those people, the Anjum, the Saddam Hussein, also all those people who lives in the graveyard. It provides life to them. And as I've said in the theoretical framework also, that this graveyard and other such heterotopic places, it exists in outside the mainstream society. And despite being existing in the outside society, it also includes such a people regardless of their cultural and social backgrounds. And it links personal histories of marginalization with the collective struggles, forging solidarity among the diverse group and renegotiation social justice in the face of oppressive regimes. Graveyard as a home for many. Well, it provides home for Hijras, Dalit, and Kashmirs. It first of all, Anjums lives there, and then comes the blind Imam, and then comes the baby who is rescued by her, an animal lover and musician, Maulvis, Tilos, Saddam Hussein, and who is falsely accused of being a terrorist after being killed of his wife and his daughter. So in conclusion, the Ministry of Utmost Happiness novel redefines the graveyard from a symbol of death into the dynamic and vibrant secular sanctuary where marginalized individuals thrives. And this reimagining of the graveyard critiques the oppressive narratives perpetuated by the dominant power structure. And the novel invites us to reconsider how the space deemed marginal can be transformed into vibrant sites of resistance. And to add on to my personal reflection, I want to say that during the crafting of this presentation, I had kept in mind that the traditional role of the graveyard that is given by Northrop Frye in his archetypal reading, that whenever we have studied in the semester 2, that whenever such kind of gloominess or graveyards comes, then we see that something bad will come. It is kind of a bad omen. But in this, the graveyard is seen not as a bad omen, but it gives love and connection to human beings. So this kind of a deconstruction Roy had did in her work, and moreover, the idea of heterotopic places is also very much fascinated to me, because we are going in such kind of places and we even not aware about it, like graveyard. And other one important I want to share, that the shopping malls that we go, that are also being considered as a heterotopic places. in which all the peoples from all the various communities gather there, regardless of their social background or the cultural background or any kind of discrimination. They gather there and they talk with each other, and the connection happens. And these are my works cited. And thank you.
So, Akash, my question is, don't you think that the concept of sanctuary and secularism are somewhat contradictory from a religious perspective?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that religion teaches us that how should we live and how we have to convey brotherhood to each fellow human beings. And in this novel, the sanctuary means something that provides a protection from outside world. So in a way, it is not so much contradictory, but one can say it may be contradictory. But in the case of novel, it also gives accommodation and it also provides protection to the various peoples. Like as I mentioned, that there are peoples like Saddam Hussein who has casted out from the one who killed his father. So in a way, it provides accommodation to various orphan peoples also. So in a way, that are my views on this question.
Akash, my question is, the graveyard is a paradoxical site of both ending and new beginning. How does this duality reflect the larger political and existential crisis depicted in the novel?
Yes, in this novel, the graveyards does blurs the line between the life and death, and this way, how Arundhati Roy has reimagined the graveyard. And in the novel, if I talk about, then there are political, in the larger political context. If I want to say that there are riots in the Gujarat riots that we see, and because of that riots and witnessing the murder of that Zakir Mia, Anjum had thought about that she should go to the graveyard to find a purpose in her life, and for that reason she has crafted this Jannat guest house. And as I have said in the presentations also, that these provides not only accommodation but it also stand as a human connection and love, and also it gives the purpose in their life to live, because they are outcasted from the society, from the mainstream society, and that is why they have gathered in the Jannat guest house. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself Hardi Bora, and today's my presentation topic is Echoes of Resistance, Revthi's Letter and the Maoist Struggle in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Here are my personal details, table of content, and my hypothesis is Arundhati Roy's Ministry of Utmost Happiness challenges the mainstream narrative of Maoist insurgency by humanizing its participants, particularly through the character of Revthi. Her letters serves as a crucial narrative device that expose both the ideological aspirations and the her movement, which highlighting the human cost of revolution, states repression, and the emotional turmoil of armed resistance. My research question is, how does Revthi's character contribute to nuanced representation of Maoism in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness? Let's start with the introduction. Brief introduction of the novel. It is published in 2017, and it was Arundhati Roy's first novel in 20 years. The work blends personal stories with the topical issues as it uses a large cast of characters, including a transgendered woman and a resistance fighter in Kashmir to explore contemporary India. Uh, 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 novels genres political fiction, literary fiction, and magic realism. Its narrative structure fragmented and non-linear linear narrative, which weaving multiple stories and perspectives. Themes included identity, gender fluidity, caste oppression, political resistance, environmental degradation, and love in conflict ridden in India. Uh, protagonist protagonist is Anjum, a transgender woman who establishes a sanctuary in a graveyard in Old Delhi. Political narrative style blends with the poetic prose with a journalistic realism and interweaving the personal and political narratives. Um, in the novel, Maoism representation in the character of Revti, which is the minor character, and who is a Maoist rebel. She also symbolizes resistance against the state oppression and marginalized struggles. Jantar Mantar and protest culture highlights the significance of India's protest sites in shaping socio-political discourse. Kashmir conflict depicts the brutal realities of insurgency in military and occupation and the erasure of Kashmiri voices. It also symbolizes the novel's title suggested a utopian vision amid dystopian realities. What is the Maoism? The brief overview of Maoism in India. The CPI Maoist seeks to overthrow the Indian state through agrarian armed revolution inspired by Mao Tse-tung's thoughts. The movement has expanded across one third of India's territory with strong network in forests and urban areas. Maoist possesses sophisticated arms, intelligence networks, and conduct the counter-offensive of attack on security forces and civilians. The Indian government acknowledges Maoism as the biggest internal security challenge, which posing serious threats to governance. Government efforts in development and security have had limited success in countering Maoist propaganda and psychological warfare. Um, in the context of Revti, a former Maoist rebel in the Ministry of Atmosphere embodiment of the human costs of ideological resistance. Her letter is both deeply personal and political charged, which reflecting on themes of sacrifice, betrayal, and the brutality of the state. Through her narrative, Roy highlights the immense suffering endured by rebels, including torture, loss, and disillusionment, which revealing the heavy toll of armed struggle. Revti's story delves into the ideological depth of the Maoist movement, which exposing its foundation in systematic oppression while also acknowledging its entang- entanglement in cycles of violence. By portraying her tragic journey, Roy critiques not only states ruthlessness, suppression of dissent, but also the paradoxes and limitations of revolutionary movement, which questioning the ultimate prize of resistance. Second, the Revti's character, the personal and the political in Maoist representation. Was a former Maoist rebel in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, represent intersection of personal suffering and political resistance. She endures state of brutality, betrayal, and displacement, aligning with Maoist ideology as a means of challenging systematic oppression. Revti embodies both the vulnerability and rebels facing persecution and their agency in resisting state power through the armed struggle. Her story disturbs the conventional portrayal of Maoists as mere aggressor, aggressors, revealing the deeper socio-political motivations behind that fight. Significance in the novel through the Revti, Roy humanizes the Maoist movement, which exposing the structural violence that fuels insurgency and questioning the cost of revolutionary resistance. Moreover, Amir Shaheen uh, has written in his article, Maoists, the freedom fighter of the forest, are declared terrorists by the government of India. They are the people who suffer at the hand of government oppression by being killed, starved, and devoid of their basic rights. Comrade Revthi is a character who is tortured and repeatedly raped by the policemen for her elegance with the Maoist party. She gives up her baby so that another person won't be at the disposal of the party or the policeman to be used to either a pound and revenge. Rules according to which all Maoists should live and saved her daughter from a terrible fate. Another in the Kumar article, he wrote in the novel, namely there are another two minor character, Jahanara and Mariam, and Revthi undergo the physical and mental hardships due to their daughters. They put their own identities at the stake of affirm their respective daughters' personal and social identities. Jahanara gives birth to hermaphrodite, namely Anjum. Mariam's daughter Tilo is born out wedlock, and Revthi's daughter Miss Udaya Jabin is a outcome of a brutal rape by 6 policemen. The mothers are benevolent, whereas the Orthodox society and malevolent towards them. Jahanara suffers trauma, so does her daughter Anjum. Mariam disowns her illegitimate daughter Tilo and bears physical distress in her early life and mental anguish in the later part of her life. Tilo also faces the hardships of life throughout the novel, and finally, Revthi tolerates the brutal rape, and her daughter, Miss Udaya Jabin, suffer identity crisis in her infancy. Roy presents her woman character as the victims of the Indian patriarchal society. Third one is Revti's letter, uh, which is came in the ending part of the novel. Revti's reflected in her letter that reveals a deep contemplation on the revolution, love, and the betrayal she faces from both comrades and the state. Critics of state brutality, she exposes the relentless upon rebel and marginalized communities. Internal Maoist contradictions in the letter highlights the ideological fractures, mistrust, and betrayal within the Maoist movement itself. Emotional weight and disillusionment in her words, carry the pain of loss, shattered idealism, and the grim realization of the movement's limitations. Symbolism of the latter in it stands as both personal lament and a political document which questioning the cost of futility of revolutionary struggle. Fourth one is human cost and ideological dissonance in the novel. State violence and silencing of Maoists exposes the brutal suppression of dissent, portraying extrajudicial killings, torture, and the systematic erasure of Maoist voices from mainstream discourse. Revthi's symbolism embodies the existential crisis within revolutionary movements, which tone between ideological conviction and the personal cost of resistance. Paradox of resistance highlights the tension between the idealism and revolutionary change and the harsh reality of suffering, disillusionment, and betrayal within both the state and the movement itself. A human cost of rebellion in the novel that underscores the sacrifice made by rebels' physical suffering, loss of identity, and alienation, which questioning whatever the pursuit of justice justifies such personal destruction. Moral ambiguity present a nuanced critic um, ref, uh, refusing to romanticize either the state of the Maoists and instead exposing the moral complexity of armed resistance. In the conclusion, Revthi's narrative compels us to rethink the Maoism beyond ideological rhetoric, shedding light on the deeply personal struggles and moral dilemmas and human cost of armed resistance. Through her story, the novel challenges monolithic portrayals of Maoist insurgents, offering a nuanced perspective of that highlight their vulnerabilities, aspiration, and sacrifice. And the at the end, ultimately, Revthi's journey underscores the paradox of revolution and how the pursuit of justice can be entangled with betrayal and suffering. Her story serves as a poignant reminder that ideological warfare is not just a fought of battlefields, but within the hearts of those who endure its consequences, which questioning whether the promise of change is ever worth the price paid. Here are my work cited, and thank you. Now you are if you have a question, you are free to ask.
Question is, how does Revthi's story challenge the conventional portrayal of Maoist rebellion in mainstream narratives?
Okay, so Vishwa, Devti's story, Devti's stories challenges uh, we she wrote a letter to before he dies. In that letter in that letter she expressed all the dilemmas and expressed her the brutality which she felt, and then as a Maoist rebel in the mainstream narrative, and that conventional portrayal in the narratives.
Hardi, my question is, how does being a mother shape Revti's journey, and how does it create a conflict between her beliefs and her emotions?
When Reiki gave a birth to her daughter, and gave a birth to daughter, and he gave up on her, and that state of conflict between her beliefs and emotions are was the conflict between beliefs and her emotion. Thank you.
So, Hardi, you have not typed your topic also. Hardi, then Kavita, and Nanda. From this three dissertation topic I am talking about. Three, yesterday I think you might have received the message. From this group, 3 of you are still remaining. So type your topic quickly. Hardi, Kavita, and Nanda. Similarly, from the evening, Asha, Hemali, Jatin, Jai. So not type the topics. Okay, before we move on to this, in the citation of the last presentation, we have one good example to discuss. In the presentation, she has cited, let me share. Ministry of Utmost Happiness from Britannica for biographical things. So there is this citation in text given here and at the end also. So normally most of you find that in Britannica it is editors. It is given by editors. So you can also write editors common. But at times the names are also given. For example, when you click on this, we come to this Britannica entry of Ministry of Utmost Happiness. And when we read minutely, we find learn about this topic in these articles. It means that that part is taken from another article. So we can scroll down to see that article from where it is taken. And here we find the name of the person also, or more actions are there. And when we click on site, we come to know that Bhattacharjee Urnisha is the writer of this article for Britannica also. So this is how, when you are doing dissertation writing research, but you have to search a lot. You have to do lots of digging to find the source and to reach out to the appropriate things also. Yes, you can start now.
So hello everyone, myself Hiral Vaita, and today I'm going to conduct my presentation on voices from the margins, politics, identity and resistance in table of contents. So my hypothesis for the presentation is that the Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy challenges the dominant narrative of the nationhood, gender and caste by amplifying the voices to the marginalized communities and the persons. And through its fragmented narrative structure and intersectional portrayal of the identity, the novel serves as the form of the literary resistance against the social and political oppression in the contemporary time of India. So my research question for this presentation is that how does the Ministry of Utmost Happiness represent the politics of marginalization and identity and resistance, and in what ways does Arundhati Roy use the narrative structure to challenge the dominant socio-political discourse? So I start my presentation with the quote by Arundhati Roy in the novel that she lived in the graveyard like a tree. So explanation of this line is that this line from Arundhati Roy's novel introduced us to Anjum as a transgender woman who resides in a graveyard that symbolized both exclusion and resilience for her. And through her story and others, Roy amplifies the voice of the marginalized and marginalized people, caste, contemporary India. So my thesis statement of the presentation is that novel provides a platform for marginalized people and communities by critiquing the political oppression and social exclusion and the struggle for identity by for the person and the caste. It challenges the dominant national narratives and offers the alternative perspective on the gender identity, caste oppression, and the resistance. So, in the introduction of the presentation, let's delve into the background of the Arundhati Roy and the novel. Arundhati Roy is an Indian author and activist renowned for her critique of the state power, social inequality, and human rights and in violence. The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, which published in 2017, is her second novel published 20 years after The God of Small Things, which published in 1997. Unlike her debut novel, which focused on the caste and family politics, this narrative intertwines with the multiple stories or the characters exploring the gender, caste, religious, and intolerance and political conflict in. Let's focus on the voices from the margins. I divided 2 points in the voices from the margins. First of all, let's focus on the gender and identity. In that, Anjum and the Hijra community represent the struggle for the belonging in the Indian society and how rigidly gendered by the societal people, and their movements from home to Khwabga and the graveyard symbolize the exclusion and resilience in the novel and in the common society also. In the novel, Roy critiques the gender as a social construct, questioning the limits of the identity and inclusion between the normal people and the marginalized people. So in the second point, political and caste oppression, so Kashmir and state violence, Tilo's story exposes the Kashmir's conflict between the military operation, enforced the disappearances and the trauma, and Roy challenges the state narrative and it amplifying the voices of Kashmiri people's resistance. And under the topic of the Dalit, Adivasis and the caste oppression point, according to Peer and Rawat and the Satyanarayana, Saddam Hussein, who was the Dalit person that renames himself after the Iraq's leader, symbolizing the defiance. And novel critiques the caste violence, systematic oppression, and land displacement in between the people. In the politics and identity, nationhood and exclusion, according to Chattopadhyay, Roy critiques the Indian democratic ideals, revealing the religious intolerance between the Indian people and caste hierarchy and the state oppression of the Indian people. Media, police, and bureaucracy foundation as the tool of silence and marginalized voice at the time where the rights and the questioning subjects going on in the India. As we all know that in today's time also that media and the democracy should focus on the topics like the education and the progressive points, but they are more focusing on the some of YouTube channels and some of authors and etc things. And in the personal versus collective identity, Anjum and Tilo, both the person struggles with the gender, religion, and the political identity throughout the whole novel till their life. And the novel suggests that identity is fluid and which is shaped by the societal pressures and societal authorized person, and it it will affect their own resistance for their whole life. So in the forms of resistance in the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, alternative spaces like Jannat Guest House, where Anjum's graveyard shelter offers the refugee and the defines the against the societal exclusion. uh, in the narrative resistance, the novel's non-linear fragmented structure disrupts the dominating storytelling, which leads towards the amplifying silent voices and solidarity as the resistance. That we found that families of Anjum, Saddam Hussein, and Tilo that shows love and friendship as the acts of defines that against the oppression of the society. So my learning outcome of this presentation is that understand how the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, the critics, the marginalized people, and the nationhood and the resistance of the common people, and analyze that how alternative space for the marginalized people or the Dalits or the Hijra community, that it leads to the solidarity function towards the acts of define of their that all the communities and their identity in the society, and recognizing the intersection of the gender, caste, and the politics, and shaping how the society and their characters in the resistance. So in the conclusion of the presentation, I would like to conclude with this, that the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, the challenges the dominant narrative by the amplifying the marginalized voices like Anjum and Saddam Hussein, and redefining the resistance through its character, fragmented structure, and alternative spaces like Khwabga. And the novel critics the identify oppression and resilience, and ultimately how this asserts that acts of defines the both personal and collective characteristic of the person and the community, both the thing, and are these all the things are essential in reclaiming the agency in justice of the by the marginalized the marginalized people, uh, taking too much burden by the authorized person or the society on their brain and their community and their lifestyle also. So these are my references, and thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Questions in online mode. Online mode questions you can ask and you can reply there. Your this slide format is not okay. Display that slide format.
Last one.
Let me share from means entire template that you have taken of this is not appropriate. You have to see that it is appropriate to thematically appropriate to your presentation. Slide that you put about personal information. That also somebody's photograph, I think you have put. This is what we are telling from first semester. You don't have to do this. Now in final semester, you are doing that. You also tell about not using the photo of others in display picture. But here in the PPT, you are putting that. It means you have not learned anything. Or this image also. It doesn't go with this novel. So thematically, you have to see when you prepare slides, it has to be in tune with what topic you are dealing with. Anything you cannot take and present. Okay, next one. Ask questions in the YouTube comment and you reply there. Okay. It is already 2:30 and we'll have to have the afternoon session also.
Hello everyone. I am Kavita Chauhan and I am dealing with the topic of the presentation, the echoes of the unheard, the marginalized community in the novel Ministry of the Utmost Happiness. Let's start presentation with it's my academic information and the hypothesis of this presentation. Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness explore the how marginal community resist the systematic oppression and reclaim the identity. The novel suggests that alternative spaces like a Jannat guest house symbolize the resilience, challenging dominant power structure. My research questions: how does the Ministry of Utmost Happiness depict the struggles and resilience of Hijra, Dalits, and Kashmiris? How does the Roy redefine the identity and justice through the voice of introduction of Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness portrays the struggle and resilience of marginal community in the India. The novel highlights the individual who exist outside mainstream society, hijra, Dalit, religious minority, and political distance, shedding light on their life experience through the integrated narrative. Roy challenges societal hierarchy and questions system of power that silence this voice, that explore how the novel gives space the marginalized, that fight for dignity, and the broader theme of the identity, exclusion, and justice. About the novelist, the full name of the Arundhati Roy, Susanna Arundhati Roy. She was born in 24th in 24th 1961 in Shillong, India, and now live in Meghalaya. Arundhati Roy is the Indian writer, activist, and public intellectual known for her bold critique of society, social and political injustice. Roy's writing is known for for its lyrical prose and non-linear storytelling and deep political engagement, making her one of the most influential contemporary Indian writers. Whether through fictional or essays, her work remain a powerful tool of resistance, amplify the voices of those often ignored by the system. His notable work of the God of Small Thing and Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Honor and award was a Booker Prize in 1997 for God of Small Thing, and National Film Award for Best Scriptwriter in 1980, and contemporary now is she was get a Pen Pinter Prize in 1924. Who are the marginalized community? In the definition of Oxford Dictionary, the exclusion in the which individual or group are related to the free or of the society, being denied economic, political, and symbolic power of and pushed toward being outsider. See also marginalized, combat demarginalization. Example of the marginalization and group in the novel: Hijra, transgender community, Dalit, obsessed the castes, Kashmir, conflict of people, religious minorities, and Anjum, the Hijra protagonist. Background: born as Aftab, and after the few she was get like Anjum as a transformation in the Hijra mark her escape from the rigid gender norms. Uh, Khwabgab, initially seen as a seniority, a house of the dream, where she find identity and escape, transformation. Later, after the experience communal violence, Anjum create the Jannat guest house in a graveyard, symbolize the both loss and resistance. The world had divided man and woman into the neat little compartment. The Hijra were bridged in the contentment. The Dalit experience in the novel. Character overview: the born Daya Chand endure the caste-based violence where his father is lines for minor transgression. Identity revengeation. Adopt the name Saddam Hussein as the act of the defiance against the oppression and the caste system. Uh, Saddam Hussein, the character of the belonged to the community, Dalit community, and he was suffering suffering for the caste system, social commentary. His narrative explored the deep-rooted inequality of the caste in the India. There was no question of the justice, only of learning to live with injustice. The Kashmiri and political marginalization. Musa and Tilo. Their lives are intertwined with the conflict in Kashmir, representing the suffering and resilience of the region caught in the marginalized voice, state violence. During the colonial rights, that the brutal suppression in the Kashmir is not only a narrative that simplify the Kashmiri struggle, highlight the gap between the real experience and media portrayal. Kashmir will one day make India its respect. Janat guest house, space for the marginalized. The creation established by Anjum in the graveyard Janat guest house become a sanctuary for this rejected by society. Symbolism transform space of the death in the one of the life and collective hope. Act as a physical manifestation of the collective consciousness among the marginalization. Community provide refuge for Hijra, Dalit, and other outsiders, challenging in the exclusionary practice of mainstream society. Women's resistance and identity. Character of Tilotama is known as Tilo, embodies the resistance by the rejected traditional role and navigate the complex personal and political relationships. Contract with the Anjum. While Anjum expressed her identity openly, Tilo's silence and defined choice underscore different facts of the female resistance. Border implication. The novel critiques the narrow definition of the womanhood imposed by society and reimagine the feminine strength as a multifaceted empowerment. The act of the telling one's own story become the tool for reclaim the identity and dignity. Social and economic marginalization. In the urbanization and neoliberalization, the novel critiques the rapid urban development and neoliberalization policies that displace the poor. Economic disparities. Forced to live in duplicated or waste area. Cultural impact. The struggle for resource and dignity is a resecure theme in the life of the oppressed. It's the conclusion of the presentation. The Ministry of the Utmost Happiness shed the light on the struggle of marginalized communities, challenging the societal norms and power structures. Through the Anjum, Saddam, Musa, and Tilo, Roy criticized the oppression while celebrating the resistance and resilience and resistance. The novel argues as the rethinking identity, belonging, and justice. Ultimately, it is a call for inclusion, dignity, and hope in the further world. This is my references, and thank you. If you have any question, feel free to ask me.
It online, huh? In that you give the you check this one reference of Oxford reference that you have given. To cite marginalization, you have given the link of Oxford reference, but I'm not able to open that to reach to that source. So check that what is cited. This is marginalization, Oxford reference from OUP. When we click the link, we come to this page. So something is empty there. Okay, here you have given. Okay, yeah, it is here. So this reference is coming from this a dictionary of media and communication. at the bottom, there is quick reference from sociology, and that is a dictionary of media and communication. And that is written by Daniel Chandler and Rod Monday. So their name can be used when you cite. When we see reference, normally references are written by somebody. If it is a dictionary entry, then maybe somebody's name is not given. Most of the time, even in the dictionary entry, they try to give the names of the writers. There is a team of people who sit down to make dictionary entries. So names are given. But sometimes the editorial board is working, group of people, names are not given also. But if it is reference, it will have some name. So it is not Oxford Dictionary, but Oxford Reference. And it is coming from this dictionary written by Daniel and Rod. So when you cite, you have to cite by that name. Okay, next one.
So very good afternoon to all of you, and today is the second presentation of semester 2. So today I'm going to deal with Dinanath Datta's journey, contemporary quest. This is my personal information. This is the table of content I'm going to deal with. So this is my hypothesis of this topic. The novel Gun Island by Amitav Ghosh illustrates that myths are not merely ancient stories but serve as a lens to understand the contemporary global crisis, particularly migration and climate change. So, through Dinanath Datta's journey, the novel demonstrates how personal transformation is linked to the realization that history, myth, and environmental changes are interconnected. And my research question for this is how does Gun Island use Dinanath Datta's journey to highlight the relationship between myth, migration, and climate change? And what does this suggest about the relevance of myth in understanding the modern crisis? About the author, he was a Kolkata writer, West Bengal, India, and he studied at Oxford and Alexandria and Delhi. And he got many awards, like some of them I will speak. Gyanpith Award in 2018 he got, and this Dan David Prize he got in 2010. And now, before I would speak about Dinanath Datta, I would speak a little bit about the novel that Gun Island is a novel by Amitav Ghosh, which was written in the year 2019, and it speaks about the modern retellings of the myth in the story, and where the novel is very thought provoking and captivating. So this is one of the character from Dinanath Datta. So now I will speak about who is Dinanath Datta. He's a Datta as a Din. He's also known as Dinu. He's a rare book dealer from Brooklyn with roots in Kolkata, a staunch rationalist. He dismisses the myths and the supernatural, firmly believing in logic and reason. However, his worldview begins to shift when he stumbles upon the legend of Sadagar, the gun merchant. During a visit to Kolkata, he dwells deeper into this ancient tale that closely tied to the goddess Manasa Devi. So he finds himself drawn into a journey that blurs the line between the myth and reality. So forcing him to question his long held skepticism. Like he was a skeptical person. Like he don't believe in the myths and that sort of thing. Because as he was a rare book dealer. Dean's journey and transformation. His journey takes him from Kolkata to the Sundarbans, where he investigates the shrine of the gun merchant and witnesses the first-hand the devastating effects of climate change, cyclones, and flooding. So his quest then leads him to Venice and Los Angeles, where he encounters the migrants like Rafi and Tipu, the character of the novel, whose struggles mirrors the legendary gun merchant's tale of displacement and survival. So along the way, he Din Dinanath Datta experiences profound connections with nature, encountering the snakes, dolphins, and sheep worms and storms, all of which seems to echo the themes of ancient legend. So initially a skeptic, Dean gradually comes to understand that myths and reality are deeply intertwined, revealing that migration, environmental crisis, and history often repeat themselves in different forms. Themes in Dean's quest, myth and reality. Myth and reality in the novel challenges the idea that myths are not just old stories, but by showing their relevance in modern times, but the legend of the gun merchant, which reflects the struggles of contemporary refugees. Migration and climate change, where Dean's journey highlights the global crisis of climate refugees as seen in the experiences of Rafi and Tipu, where the migration to Europe mirrors the gun merchant's own journey. And whereas the personal growth by the end, where he Niranath embraces a non-anthropocentric worldview, realizing that human and non-human lives are interconnected. So his experience break his earlier rigid belief in the science and rationalism. Now I will conclude my presentation here, where Dinanath Datta quest is ultimately a search for meaning in a rapidly changing world, where the boundaries between the history, myth, and reality blur. So Gun Island seamlessly connects the past and present, illustrating how the history, myths, and migration are deeply intertwined and continue to shape the human experiences. So through Dean's transformation, Amita Ghosh, the writer of this novel, highlights the enduring power of myths, revealing how they hold the deeper truths about human existence, displacement, and the environmental crisis that define our times. So my citation, and thank you.
There's lots of need to improve. Reshma, still, you're no citations proper, doesn't serve any purpose. Now you are in 4th semester, and I don't think any chance of improvement now. Subsequently, in all the semesters, we have to tell you, but still we don't see that substantially you have improved. Even in your slides, the title Gun Island, you are not at all highlighting or italicizing that this is that mechanics of writing. Now you have studied in research methodology, all this mechanics of writing and everything, but you are not able to display that when you write. Simple such things are there. And this also doesn't serve any 3-4 slides, doesn't serve any purpose of presentation. This is not at all also known as a presentation also by a semester 4 students. No citations. So this is very poor. Okay, we end this here today, and we already have created a new link. So join that link and ask the other students to come. We are starting within 10 minutes.